All right, and there we are. Hi there, how y'all doing? Hope this Friday is treating you all well. So yeah, had to delay it a bit because I am catching up with a bit of work. I was a bit busy the past few days. I think, if I'm not mistaken, for almost 4 weeks we have coverage of clips for the clip content channels out there. I started catching up with the VODs. I'm still like 2 weeks behind, I think. Because I'm saying 2 weeks behind because I got to the point where I can go back on Twitch and grab the clips from there, which is a lot better. Because I'll be honest, because I got so behind, I had to grab a few of them from the VODs left over on YouTube, and sometimes I've had some weird quality issues with the cut VOD or the cut clips that I got from the YouTube ones, because YouTube also now has the a clip feature as well, where you can like cut clips and they can be auto uploaded. I was kind of curious to see if they had like something like kind of like specialized in where exactly those clips get located or stored, and from what I've seen so far, the function just works in, oh yeah, you cut a clip and then we put it in your videos tab, and that's basically it. And I don't know, I just don't really like it that much. I would have liked something maybe akin to how the shorts work. I don't think they can redirect you to the VOD, which is annoying, because considering that you got a clip from it, and it would help out with the traction and all that, to have something redirect you to the VODs compared to the shorts. You can actually even manually add connections. Maybe they could have had like some sort of like specialized place as well. I know like YouTube is getting all the like specialized tabs from like podcast, playlist, shorts and all that, so adding clips to that would be a bit annoying. What I would like is that clip feature to also at some point, because I'm guessing right now it's still like in testing, figuring out beta feature sort of thing, but I would really like it for it to get to a point similar to Twitch, where I can actually also make it into a short like portrait format video. So basically get like some sort of like mini editor kind of like platform within it, where I can quickly edit a clip if I want to within the limited time frame that YouTube Shorts allows, which is 3 minutes. That'd be nice. Right now it just cuts the VOD, it puts it there. I've used it. I have right now I have like a ton of like privated cut clips, because I don't want them to clog the video, the YouTube channel. Like on Twitch is a bit different, because the highlights and clips, the way they're kind of like stored around here, worked a bit differently, and I don't think it's the way algorithm works on Twitch is a bit funkier, while on YouTube, usually throwing things out there for the sake of just having them for storage can sometimes affect the algorithm or affect the metrics and all that. So I'm trying to also be, not sabotage myself. I'm still, putting stuff out there at a consistent pace. I'm doing the best to keep my once every 2 days I'm putting a short sort of consistency at the very least. So those channels still feel alive, because YouTube likes consistency, first of all. Of course, it also prefers a lot of watch time, which is why I'm also working on a video. I just finished the video. I've actually put the video today. Well, it's not like that big of a deal of a video. I wanted to do the long-awaited best of 2025. Basically, it's my top most viewed clips across 2025, compiled into, I think, a 22-ish long video. Mostly because the way I'm doing the clip compilation video formats is I'm keeping them almost uncut. They're basically longer uncut versions of what you'd probably find as shorts, because sometimes I grab a moment from a stream, and sometimes that moment can still be a bit too long for the short formatting, because YouTube has a thing where if the video is if a portrait video is above 3 minutes, it's gonna be automatically put into the video tab. If it's under 3 minutes and it has the portrait format, it's gonna be automatically put into the shorts tab. You have no say in where it goes when. It basically, depending on the formatting, it goes there. Depending on the video formatting and length, it goes in a specific place. So sometimes I have to cut it down. I think on TikTok it's a similar thing. I can't have it longer. I think actually no. I think in TikTok you can have it longer than 3 minutes, but it's just I'm not putting it any longer than 3 minutes. Plus, I need to catch up with the social media ones because I'm once again behind on Blue Sky on posting videos. To be fair, with Blue Sky, I want to look into something different because I saw some alternate video platform that comes from the protocol thing that is dedicated to videos, and it also like allows you to have a landscape videos as well, not just the portrait ones, because being social media, the portrait ones are the most beneficial to have there and whatnot. But anyways, basically, yeah, those are going to be uncut, so they are a bit longer. And also, it's like a specific number, like, how you'd see on how you'd see in other videos, like top 10 most watched clips of 2025 or something like that. No, the way I do it, the way I did it, and at least the way I've kind of done for all my best of, because I'm also doing it on a seasonal level, which soon enough, once we're out of February, I'm also going to make a best of winter, which is also going to include some of the December clips, which might also be seen here, and depending on performance and whatnot. Is the way I kind of do it is I take the most, I basically take top 5 most watched across each of my platform, that being TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch, because the Twitch clips can also get their own viewership. That one is a bit smaller just because, I think how the algorithm and all that works on Twitch is not necessarily as discover friendly, unfortunately. But I also take that into account because why not? It also allows me for a bigger pool of clips, and sometimes they can overlap. So at least I know for a fact that I'm gonna have a decent selection, and I'm going at least over the 10-minute mark, because I know for YouTube it's important to have like over the 10-minute mark. I think there's like some other benefits you get if you manage to make videos where people keep watch time over 10 minutes. So having longer than 10-minute videos is beneficial. I don't know, trying to somewhat game it but not necessarily overdo it, and doing it this way even with the accounted overlap taking it's still within, because even if let's say each of them are completely individual, that's 15 videos on an average of like, let's say maybe 2 minutes, slightly longer than 2 minutes. That's still, that could be at the longest somewhere around like 30 minutes maybe on average. But so far from what I've seen, the pattern with most of my compilation clips, it's somewhere around like 10 to 20 minutes. I think I've had within the 30-minute range anything the sort, right? 10, 18, 21. No, not really. I've mostly have been at I think the longest has been 21 minutes. The Do Not Abyss highlights, which now technically this one, the best of, is gonna outrank it in the length by a minute or so. But yeah, I have that one ready. I just need to make some thumbnails, and they're gonna be uploaded. I'm probably gonna work on that tomorrow. So I had to work with that. Was also catching up with the clips, but I've grabbed a few more clips per a few streams, which is why technically, even though I have almost a month's worth of shorts coverage, I'm still not caught up. I'm still like 2 weeks behind with all of it, just because I've had a few streams where I was actually felt okay with grabbing a few more than just a singular clip. Right now the highlight has been, I think, from what I've seen, Warframe, Final Fantasy. To be fair, with Final Fantasy, most of them came from the A Realm Reborn ending marathon stream, where we've done 8 hours of doing the last 2 patches of A Realm Reborn 2.5 and 2.55 patch, which in 8 hours, I was able to grab a few things. And one of the videos that I also want to work is actually also compiling all those moments from A Realm Reborn and put them together into a basically the Realm Reborn experience, where at the end of it, I'm also gonna put the final thoughts, final thoughts like experience of my Realm Reborn experience that I've had, that I've basically talked about on that stream. That I wanted to also make like a review short version of it. It's just I realized it's literally a 20 minutes long video that don't think I can realistically cut it into like under 3 minutes to kind of like synthesize his opinions. So I decided like, no, I'm just gonna keep it raw, uncut, and have it exclusively as part of the Realm Reborn video compilation of all the clips that I've gathered for the ARR experience, which I think it's most of it. I'm not sure. I think I've had a short period where I haven't done clips for Final Fantasy, but then after that, I've done all of it. So that's one. That's probably the next. That's the next video that's gonna be in the works. Then, most likely, depending on the time frame, because the video that I currently have for the best of, I'm probably gonna put it next week. Because I usually schedule them on Fridays. Although I could probably reschedule them in some other days, but I think on Fridays, yeah. Which actually lines up pretty well, because then on the 6th, I'm gonna do the best of the winter season on the 6th of March, next 2 Fridays from now. Then I'm gonna put the Final Fantasy 14 compilation on Friday the 13th. I think we had like, yeah, 2 Fridays the 13th in a row. Damn. Yeah, that one's gonna be next week, 3 weeks from now, actually. Yeah, the Final Fantasy one. Then what I am thinking, because I also want to make like a few other like compilation clips. Although these ones, I'll have to think about it because they're probably gonna be a bit shorter. I have to like check the video length of it. I also want to like make some Warframe moment like compilation ones. And the way I want to organize them, I want to organize them by arcs. Because I've progressed through them as, you know, currently through the story arcs. We've finished Arc 1 and we are already well into Arc 2. So I thought maybe we could do a stream where we experience with all the clips and all the moments from up to Arc 2. Because right now all of them have been done. So that could be put together as well. Also, the thing that I realized that actually, yeah, scheduling on the 13th lines it up pretty well, because that's also the last short schedule from that Realm Reborn stream that has it's planned to be released. So it's gonna line up pretty well. Yeah, that's gonna be the other one, the Arc 1, then probably an Arc 2. We'll see, depending on, probably Void Train is gonna be another one that's gonna come up pretty soon as well, because that's also like another pattern I want to do. I want to do compilations with every games that I've completed on stream, especially if they're like shorter format games. For games that are longer format, I'm probably gonna figure out, like as I said, for example with Final Fantasy, I'm doing them by expansion. Currently with Warframe, I think I'm gonna do them by arc, and then we'll see after that. Technically, it's gonna be Arc 1, Arc 2, and Arc 3. We'll see with Arc 4 how exactly we're gonna do that, because technically that's gonna be a bit lengthier, and I don't think there's any inclination of where Arc 4 is in terms of progression. So that's gonna be one of it. There's probably gonna be a point where, you know, the Warframe ones are gonna be maybe more of a seasonal thing, where up until maybe between the major update schedules, that's gonna be like between major updates, maybe we're gonna have like compilations. We'll see how exactly I'm gonna do that. And that point, I'll figure it out. What else? I do, on occasion, because I said I do grab some review things, but I usually cut them up to be like in short format. But maybe I could also put them as actual long videos, because I've said it in the past, depending on the stream, maybe I can occasionally would like to maybe grab some significant moments off stream that we can put them as actual full length experiences, like you know, video experience instead of just being part of the VOD. I'll think about it. But yeah, I'm catching up with all of that, so that's hopefully I'm hoping by the end of next week, maybe a bit later than that. We'll see. I'm gonna be done with it. Because at this point, I'm at a point where I can catch up with them on Twitch, which is going to be better. Because yeah, now I reminded myself because I just went onto side tangents. And the thing that I don't like on YouTube, for some reason, like the quality sometimes gets a bit crunchy. And I've noticed when I was like editing the videos and making like the portrait formats, the quality was kind of lacking. And right now, because out of just 2 reasons. One, resource management, specifically of my system. It's not as resource intensive for me to multi-stream than you know, if I were to like multi-stream and also record. Because that's something I've done in the past before I started doing the lives on YouTube. I was streaming and also at the same time recording. So that way I had a high quality VOD that I could have edited and put up on YouTube as well. And that's usually a bit higher quality, I think. And I don't know, I think sometimes the way the YouTube editor thing works, they look... I'm guessing due to compression and all that, they look a bit crunchier at times, and I felt with some of them they got a bit crunchier. While Twitch, from what I've seen, it kind of keeps this quality in check. I don't think I've had any sort of videos, and every time, whenever, in almost all clips that I've gotten from YouTube, I've had some sort of small little video error. I'm not sure that if those video errors are like video corruption are a problem on my end that has something to do with how the streaming output goes and the bandwidth and bitrate is sent out there and it's saved, or it has something to do with how the video gets edited and then, you know, sent my way and downloaded. But and also the corruption is not like something big. It's just usually, I don't know, maybe a millisecond or two of corrupted of a corrupted frame or something like that, which freaks out the video editor, and I basically just have to cut that frame. It's literally, in most scenarios, you won't even observe it. Like, I just cut like 4 milliseconds around that corrupted frame or something like that, and it's unnoticeable. Like, you won't even notice every time I do it. But for some reason with YouTube, I've had it consistently happen, like outside with one exception, every time I caught something. While with Twitch, whenever I grab the video from there, at times it happens, but it's not like consistent times. And usually when it happens with Twitch, it happens whenever I make a highlight that I cut, like, because the highlight editor, like the video editor from within Twitch, it allows you to grab free time chunks, free timelines, free separate timelines into one highlight. And usually in those transition stages between the two time frames, usually the corruption happens. While on YouTube, I don't have that option. I just choose a time frame from where I'm cutting from start to end. I can't select, you know, multiple of them. I'm just choosing one longer one, and I cut from that end. It happens somewhere in somewhere around it. It just gets it just kind of like freaks out. So yeah, it's a bit weird. I'm not sure exactly what's the shenanigans there. But it happened more often with YouTube than it happened with... But again, I'm not sure if it's of how the video gets edited and compressed and prepped for, you know, for download on my end, on their end, and then sent to me, or it has something to do with how the VOD is saved, and maybe I have a corrupted frame because of how, you know, my setup is put together. Maybe it's actually an issue somewhere on my end that it occasionally happens and it causes a weird hiccup. But yeah, unfortunately, you know, it's been more lower resource used to just have multi-stream and just basically be on time with most of my with my Twitch archive. So basically I can grab anything from the Twitch archive and use there. Plus there's like another advantage on the Twitch archive. I'm also at the VODs there, don't have the background music, where TikTok has had some issues with my BGM that you hear right now. I'm not allowed to have more than 1 minute, and if I have a clip that is longer than a minute, TikTok doesn't really like that and it mutes the video. So also doing these on Twitch, it allows me to because OBS gives me the setting and Twitch has the functionality of having audio tracks that do not get saved on the VOD version. They're only part of the live. While on YouTube, I don't have that. It's just a singular audio track that gets outputted. So all that you hear within the stream is going to be heard, while compared to Twitch, where you're not going to hear it, all of it. If you start watching the VOD. Yeah, that's another thing. To be fair, because of that, I've also been a bit more careful and just to no longer be as disruptive on streams where I usually have some sort of like additional background music, usually games. In most of the game streams, I've stopped having the background music on. But for streams like this one, for example, where I'm mostly just talking and don't have any sort of other ambience or any sort of noise that is generated from anywhere else, I keep it for the entirety of the stream. And I had to edit at least a clip or two from those archives, so we'll have to see if TikTok, one of them is pretty low volume, so I'm hoping that TikTok does not grab it or does not detect it, so at least it can be saved there. If not, oh well, it's gonna be on YouTube anyways if it's gonna get muted. It is what it is. I'm not gonna have any ways to edit it without having the audio be really crunchy. Because they are all automatically put on uploaded on video on YouTube. And on Twitch, I no longer have the archive. I don't have access to multiple audio tracks. While if I were to record it on OBS, yeah, they would still have the separate audio tracks the way I have it set up for stream. But I don't keep them recorded because it's resource intensive. Once I'm gonna have a stream machine, a dedicated like stream machine, sure, that's not gonna be a problem for me to also record and stream at the same time and have that be basically my backup in case I need to. But until then, nah, I can't do it anymore. It's too resource intensive for me, especially with more higher end games. But yeah, that's the general like catch up of things. I'm basically catching up with a lot of stuff. I'm also slowly probably gonna be once again become a bit more active on the socials and all that. You're probably gonna see me a bit more around here and there, mostly because I'm usually active on the socials when on my free moments, whenever I'm kind of I'm just free and not working on anything. So on my off stream and off work sort of hours, which are no longer as intensively occupied, because I said during my off work hours or off stream hours, I've just been playing Warframe because I've taken advantage of the end of the year Prime Resurgence. Now that has ended, I'm no longer obsessed with it. I'm no longer like pushing that. I'm just doing some daily things here and there to just keep farming, keep grinding. I have some stuff that I'm building and crafting in the foundry and all that, and I'm occasionally like leveling up. Got some new frames, all that sort of fun stuff, but I'm not doing it as it is because I'm no longer on a timer. I don't care for the current resurgence, which is Vauban and all Atlas and whatever weapons and companions are tied with them. I'm not interested in those, so I'm just fully gonna skip that. Skip this resurgence. I don't necessarily care for it, so I'm not gonna be intensively farming for relics for at least a month. And now I also know that it's I think in normal time frames the Prime Resurgence are a month long. So that's nice. I don't have to I have at least a month worth of not having to do all that, which is cool because that means that I can use some of the AI that I'm collecting to grab some of the cosmetics options, more specifically the color palettes and maybe some of the item attachments and armor pieces. That's mostly what I'm interested in. Weapon skins, I'm not sure if I'm gonna grab them, or like the Warframe skins, but the color palettes and some of the armor options and attachments, Sindanas, yeah, those I'm gonna grab them. I already grabbed both the color palettes from the Prime Resurgence shop with some of the eye that I have left. Yeah, now I'm not doing it as intensively, so I have a bit more free time and also be able to play some other games here and there, because there's some prep that I have to do a bit off stream for next week, which is gonna be Enfield. Because as I said, we got to a point where we got really rough with our character progression, and I'm now slowly making a bit of advancements. Fortunately, either for some like level up rewards or something like that, I also got some materials to craft some higher end armor, so I was able to fit out a few characters. I need to figure out like factories and all that to make those parts and those pieces myself. so can fit automatically. I've not looked into that. I've just currently farmed in advance some of the characters, but that at the very least the roster that I'm playing with, which is almost there fully. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm currently catching up with as well. And to be fair, even with Warframe, because one of the things I'm usually doing off stream is, you know, improving my equipment, improving my moddings, my Warframes, my weapons, and all that. Already took advantage of a Barrow coming up to arriving today, and grabbed all the mods. Thankfully, with all the Prime Resurgence farms that I've done, I've also had a ton of Void Traces, and not a ton of Void Traces, but I've for the Prime Resurgence, I've also farmed for a lot of Void Traces, which meant that I used the Mundane Relics, meaning that I've collected a lot of duplicates. So I was able to grab quite a decent amount. I was able to, through selling, to get quite a decent amount of ducats and grab myself all the mods. Basically, that's all I did. I used all those ducats to grab almost all the mods that were available, because there were some pretty good Prime mods put into the rotation. And I think there were like 2 gold mods that can be farmed, but only through Eidolon hunts. And I was like, I'm not sure if I want to deal with Eidolon hunts. And I saw that they were like low percentile drops, and I know from what I've heard, I don't know the details, Eidolon hunts are a bit involved, and I've heard like some people, some within the community, saying passing that they are not as sought out anymore. Like most of them, like the veteran community doesn't really do it too often anymore these days. I'm guessing most of what's worth of Eidolon has been either outdone by other content, or or some of the more relevant things can be obtained in other ways, which I'm guessing the mods are not necessarily one of them. And they were like 2 insane mods. I think it was like a pistol flash damage mod and a shotgun primary impact mod. Those were the 2 mods. And I grabbed all the primes, which were a few primed arc gun mods and a few primed weapon mods, which were really good. I grabbed myself some. The prime, when I saw the prime point blank, I didn't even question it. I grabbed it immediately, knowing that I have like 3 shotguns in my arsenal for primaries. And I'm planning to get the Sobek and the Tigris once I get the MR in the next streams. So 100% I know that I'm gonna need that prime to point blank. But anyways, yeah, that's also like another thing. I'm advancing some stuff there as well. But yeah, that's usually also like another thing that I'm doing off. So yeah, you're probably gonna see me. I'm hopefully gonna also catch up with a few of the clips in the next weeks. I might start uploading maybe from tomorrow, getting that habit as well. I'll be honest, I've been a bit off kilter as well, also because of the holidays. I don't know, it's one of those things. It's just a personal brain thing. Could be also a bit ADHD, neurodivergent sort of shenanigans, where I got into a groove. I literally got a groove and kind of a routine up until the holidays, where I was already doing like what you've seen me doing quite frequently and at a decent frequency, where I was doing a VOD, I was doing a stream. Next day I was working on a clip. Depending on progress, I was also working on a longer video, and I had those planned out for a weekly basis for a short while. And the clips were basically on time with all the streams, like prepped basically overall, and that sort of shenanigans. I was still like behind with the social media ones, but mostly because I had like scheduled plans on how to release those. That's more than why. And the holidays came. I've had a quick long break, but I haven't done anything because for the duration of the holidays I didn't do any streams. All the clips that I grabbed, I've already done them in advance. So I had, for the time I was away for vacation, I already had a good amount of clips scheduled, so I didn't have to worry of having something ready to upload. Then I got to a point where I was running out of the scheduled content. I had to kind of catch up, and I kind of like lost my rhythm, lost my groove because of the holidays and not keeping myself within that routine. And it's been a bit to kind of get myself back into it. I've also been busy with a few other things that are not related to streaming and anything like that. I've been a bit off away here and there. which also kind of kept me off kilter. And you know, I've had schedules. I've had like stream schedules that have not been consistent and whatnot when it comes to like days of streaming. So that put me a bit off. But now I think everything is back in place, and I'm slowly getting back on it. At the very least, I'm trying to catch up. And usually on days when I'm not streaming, with the exception of Sunday, I've put a significant rule outside of just announcing my schedule and all that. I'm not doing anything on Sundays anymore, just because, you know, I want to keep myself sane and whatnot. But outside that, on days when I'm not streaming, which is just Wednesday and Thursday, I'm also doing a few more things in advance. Like each day, at the very least, I'm grabbing a stream from the past archive that I have not yet grabbed, usually the oldest, and make a clip for it. If I have the time, like I did today, because I did the clip and then I still had some time, I decided to make a video. To make the next video, which is the best of 2025. I also worked on that. Tomorrow, you know, it's gonna be a similar thing. Make a clip for a VOD. I'm still, you know, doing Saturdays also like a semi-work thing, but it's not necessarily. I'm thinking not to do them as intensive as I'm doing the other days. Probably, I'm just the usual, the minimum required routine, which is, you know, the stream and having a clip. That's it, and maybe a few other things. Technically, the other one that maybe I'm also gonna do on Saturday, just so I don't have to do it on Sunday, is probably prep the schedule for next week. Just prep it in the sense of having it already planned and all the necessary parts for, you know, like thumbnails and all that put together. So on Sunday, when I do my schedule announcement, I just post them on the socials and schedule the streams on both Twitch and YouTube. And that's it. That's all I do. And then I can be off and do my own thing. But anyhow, that's the shenanigans. But enough of that. We should actually get on to the topic of today, which is more tabletop RPGs as per usual for our Fridays, and more of Beamsaber. So once again, to kind of recap and remind, when it comes to the tabletop RPG streams specifically, it's not necessarily exclusive to this, but especially during these streams, I want these to be a place for people to have chats, discussions, conversations, and any sort of forms of advice and support related to the TTRPG medium and TTRPG space within it. So, you know, if you're excited about something related to TTRPGs, be it something that's about to come out, something that you're working on, something that you're a part of, and just want to have a moment to kind of like gush and rant out, I want this to be a space for people to kind of feel excited about these kind of things. So, you know, you are welcome to do so. It doesn't have, as I said, it doesn't have to be exclusively to these streams, but these streams specifically, it's free game. On any stream you can do that. On any stream of mine specifically, you can do that. No worries, and just talk about your shenanigans, but especially on these streams, because I want this to be also a place where people can, you know, have discussions, help each other out. So if you're also having like some difficulties, some challenges, maybe someone within chat, maybe myself can help you out with some advice, be it more generalistic, be more specific, depending on everyone's knowledge on whatever game or subject you're talking about. You know, to the best of my abilities. I've started getting into the hobby in 2018. Played, like most people with D&D, played and game mastered for equal amounts, let's say. Hard to kind of quantify at this point. It's been a while. It's been a bit. But let's say in equal amounts for quite a few years of game mastering and being a player. And in recent years, I've also expanded my knowledge with other systems. World of Darkness related ones. Hunter the Reckoning 1st edition, aka the Imbued. Vampire the Masquerade 20th anniversary. And those have been kind of like the major ones. I've general lore of here and there of WoD, just because how crazy WoD is, and I've just been a bit obsessed with it. I really like the setting, especially old World of Darkness. Personally, I enjoy it a bit more. I like some elements of V5 because some of them are added together, are kind of put together in some of the chronicles we are a part of. The Ministry, for example, the way the followers of Set are organized is a lot more closer to how V5 is done. At least that's how our storyteller does it, and I liked it a lot more that way. I think there's some other elements here and there. We've also explored a bit of the kind of Hekata sect, and basically all the unified death clans put together. Although still with the factor of each clan and bloodline being unique in its own right, and not the kind of this kind of like hot pot that it kind of became in V5, where everything basically got shifted into a singular weakness, singular style. You have like certain customization that maybe lean you within a specific bloodlines or clans related to the wider expanse of the death clans, because there's a lot of lore and separate clans. I'm guessing they've done that also to kind of simplify things. I just like the variety and expanse that old World of Darkness kind of offered when it comes to like how many bloodlines and anti-tributes and clans you had available, and all the custom things and aspects about them and elements that made them unique. I just personally enjoyed that a bit more. So it was kind of like a mix where, yeah, they're like unified death clans, but no, they're still unique. They're still within the functioning rules of how each death clan works within old and Vampire 20th anniversary work. So Lamia is the Lamia. They have their specific weakness, their specific features. Same with Giovanni, Cappadocian, and so on. But anyways, weird word rant aside. Also jumped into Pathfinder Gestalt RPG as well, which for those who do not know, Gestalt basically think of kind of an in-betweener of D&D and Pathfinder, a bit more complex and a bit more customization than D&D offers, but it doesn't have the complexity or granularity that Pathfinder offers. Not even Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's still a bit more streamlined and simplified than 2nd edition. And a few one-shots here and there that I've jumped. I think I've been, charity-wise, I've been into a one-shot in recent years as part of the Stream for a Cause. Last autumn, in October actually, for Halloween, I've also been into a one-shot of The Witch is Dead, which is a one-shot RPG system created by the same author that has done the Honey Heist RPG. And of course, aside from all of this, all of the content that I've covered across the streams, which yeah, don't necessarily get it as a full game experience advice, because in most scenarios it's just me covering the content as it is written, but not yet getting the opportunity of play, because there's many RPGs out there. It's a bit it's a bit rough over there, but in general, the way it is, or what I've covered additionally, like yeah, a bit more in-depth Gestalt RPG. I've actually looked into the general rulebooks. Daggerheart, actually, it's one of them, specifically the playtest version, back when the playtest was around as a public thing, more than a year ago, almost 2 years ago. Actually, now that I think about it, because we are getting, I think, to that point, because I think it was like released somewhere in March, if I remember correctly. I think that's when I started posting, making streams of that. Yeah, it's almost 2 years ago. So yeah, that's another one. The Bunkers and Badasses system, which is the Borderlands D&D-esque kind of in-universe game, actually brought to life as an actual system. What else? Lancer, speaking of mecha, and a few like grab bags here and there of just quick revisions of things like Kendall Obscura, Call of Cthulhu, Call Divinity Lost, Mothership RPG, GURPS. For all those, I've just looked at the quick starter guides. I don't actually own the books for any of those. But as books, I've also looked at Mithras RPG, and most recently also Tactic Quest, which is the first almost diceless system that we've looked at recently. And the first one that I've actually had a look at, because, as I said in the past and today, I'm fine. I enjoy the RNG and randomness and chaoticness that dice offer as a form of improv and roleplay and basically machine and tool of driving the story forward. I'm completely fine with it. And, you know, speaking of which, Beamsaber is a Forge in the Dark game that basically is utilizes the core systems that Blades in the Dark does, which are specifically designed to facilitate this idea of moving the story forward. All the dice results are there to basically guide you in what exactly would be the outcome, what exactly is the next beat in what you wanted to achieve, or the next beat in what you wanted to progress. Basically, because you have lines of success, you have numbers of succeeding, numbers of partially succeeding or like fully succeeding, but with some additional drawbacks, or failing, or not necessarily achieving what you fully wanted, and there are some fallbacks out there, which are an interesting kind of like a progression, or how they call it, kind of like clocks. The way that basically you kind of either advance forward into the within the clocks to push forward the goal, push forward towards the goal that you wanted, or they could actually be, as the name implies, clocks in actual timers, and as you make more actions, that clock kind of runs down and you have to run the clock, or those clocks can also be a bit more flexible in utilizing them as other forms of determining outcomes, or what exactly. Actually, no, that's determining outcomes. We're gonna talk a bit more once we're semi-summarizing the Beamsaber once we get to it. But yeah, anyways, as I was talking about, yeah, I've looked at quite a few RPGs. I've played a good selection of varied systems here and there. I would love to play some more different systems in the future, of course. But yeah, I can offer advice to some degree. And if I have no experience with the system itself, I can at least offer you a more generalistic form of advice. And then you can, based on your knowledge of the rules, or you looking through the rules, can then adapt whatever I've suggested to better apply there. But yeah, don't be shy about it. Talk about, ask for advice. Especially, even though I have a topic of discussion, that's mostly so, you know, also we have a filler, something to talk about, and it's not just going to be me sitting in silence and waiting for people to respond, because at the same time, I understand some people are just here for the vibe, for the chill, for the background noise in some cases. I fully understand that. I'm there myself. You need something in the background as you're doing other things, even though you might not fully pay attention, or you might have no knowledge. Hi, I see you. I'm aware of you, because we are the same person in that regard, so don't worry about it. I completely understand. So, you know, I also understand that there are lurkers out there, and they're fully welcome. So in those scenarios, at least I have something to talk about, something to look forward to, something to discuss, something to, you know, just look at and be excited about. And for this one, I'm definitely excited, because, you know, it is Beamsaber. It is a interesting system to look at, and an interesting system to cover. And there's a lot to cover actually, not, I think, to be fair, there's a lot to cover with Beamsaber specifically. Today, I don't think it's gonna be too much, because we're only looking at the pilot section, which is not too many pages, if I'm not mistaken. It's somewhere around 33, no, 43 pages actually, now that I'm looking at it. But some of it we might skip. We might not look, because there is a section of pilot actions in depth. That might be something that I'm gonna, which on its own, it's almost 15 pages long, and pilot gear as well. And that might be a thing that I'm gonna leave for you to look into, and just stop myself right before it, which that would put us at how many pages? Not even 30, 28 pages, which I think that's enough. That's decent coverage. I think, what, last time we actually done a similar amount of pages, actually. Yeah, now that I'm looking at it. So yeah, that's more closer to what we've covered in the past weeks or so. So yeah, I'm having them a bit more granular and a bit more kind of like split apart, mostly because it's a lot of section, because this system offers a few more in-depth elements when it comes to both the pilot and the mech. And in this for this system, also the squad, it has its own little things and its own aspects of customization and how exactly your squad is organized and created, which is a collaborative element there, because all the squad members, the players, participate in that and participate in its creation. So it's a bit more, it has a lot more layers here than, for example, what Lancer has, which is mostly and purely just centralized and more mecha centric. Like, the pilot has limited things, and it's not even a tool to kind of push forward the element of roleplay as a standalone pilot without having the mech as part of it. And the mech itself, it doesn't necessarily have role-playing tools. It's mostly just a machine of combat, because that's basically what Lancer is. It's mostly combat focus. The system and the rules and the mechanics itself don't really facilitate any elements of roleplay. That's something for you to kind of mold yourself in a free flow form factor. There's no elements of structure or elements of benefits or disadvantages that your choices would bring out of that. And it's more up to you to kind of interpret those elements, or maybe embellish and add some interpretation that would impact those. Because that's, at least when I looked initially at Lancer, and as I was thinking of, how exactly I would do Lancer, because, I know my crew, and I know at least with the people that I would like to run a Lancer one-shot, at least a one-shot, they are also interested in the aspect of roleplay. So I was kind of like thinking how exactly I would do that. And Lancer has a lot of flavor text, a lot of elements of description to their abilities, which, hey, credit where credit is due. That adds a bit of world building, that adds a bit of context, and it can help you visualize what these features are about. And I'm usually my idea was to kind of like take those elements of kind of like flavor text and world building and use those as kind of like the grounds or foundation on figuring out what other social and roleplay benefits would these things offer you based on those descriptions, and maybe to some degree reinterpret some of the features or some of the abilities, of course, within common sense. That could also be interpreted as part of something that the pilot could do on their own without having the need to be inside the mech. So, with a bit of effort, I think it can be achieved. It's just, you don't really have to follow the structure that the Lancer offers you. And it's definitely not my plan, because Lancer structures is a lot more gamey. Beamsaber does something similar, but Beamsaber comes forward really quickly in the aspect that most of the prep phases, and they even said that even outside of the prep phase, it could even be within the mission itself, you can facilitate and you can create elements of roleplay quite easily. So it's not just oh, you're here to shoot guns and ask questions later sort of scenario. While within Lancer, you could, and to some degree the book kind of guides you there, but the way the structure is put together, it doesn't really give you a clear idea how exactly you would do that. But the initial mission prep phase and the mission epilogue sort of phases would allow you, I would say that you could do some sort of like free form there and facilitate a lot more roleplay. But in my opinion, I would even say within the mission itself, I would be quite flexible myself into allowing elements of roleplay wherever it seems fit. And the mission itself doesn't necessarily have to fully develop or fully unravel in combat, in just combat, similar to how Beamsaber would do it. But yeah, I forgot exactly where. Oh yeah, I was talking about like how it has like more layers, more complexity, Beamsaber compared to Lancer and all that. Because again, I went into tangents, I kind of like lost the starting point of that conversation or of that thought process. And now I just reminded myself. Okay. But yeah, I said that we're gonna look at the pilot section, which we're gonna do, I think, after we hit the hour and go through an ad break. As again, I've just been yapping for quite a while, which is fine. Honestly, I'm a bit glad sometimes that I'm having these moments, because sometimes I feel like I'm just not necessarily in the sense that you have to always keep talking. It's completely fine, even within the elements of content creation, to just have your a bit more silent and a bit more chill moments. But especially these streams, because they are more dedicated in me having a conversation and me kind of covering a specific form of content. It's not just the game experience. It's just mostly me discussing a topic. Sometimes I feel bad that I don't have much to talk about, or I just don't there is, to be fair, it is a bit of a fallacy. There is this thought and this concept that you have to fill in the dead air. Like moments of silence sometimes feel really grating to your brain, especially when you start streaming. And I can tell you, at least, you know, now that we are within 2 years of doing this, I can tell you in my first ever streams that those moments where I was not saying anything were torturous to me, because I was thinking about it. I was like, in my head, I know usually how streams kind of go. I know usually the general, as you know, from a viewer perspective and from someone who enjoys or watches content, that I know that this is a moment of silence. This is a moment where nothing really happens. I'm not adding anything, and I should say something. And it's a bit of a fallacy in the sense that you don't necessarily have to talk non-stop. It's not something that in every second you have to say a thing. You can have moments of pause. You can have just the game run its thing. Of course. And I'm not saying this in moments of like cinematics or when dialogue happens and all that. That makes sense, of course. You're not there to interrupt the dialogue, because the experience is also about you experiencing the story alongside other people, not just talking over the experience. Some people enjoy that kind of like camaraderie of experiencing something with someone else, even if it's from a distance or from within a screen or anything of that sort. I'm more than anything talking about moments where it's just the game, not much dialogue, not much exposition. It's just you playing the game, and that can also be part of the experience. Like let also the play experience tell something. It doesn't necessarily have to be always just you discussing or just you talking. And you know, not everyone is hyper, not everyone is witty, full of improv, full of moments where they can come with something, you know, quirky or witty or quick to say. Which, I'll be honest, that's on my end. I'm not the best at improv. I think I'm getting a bit better. Of course, you know, TTRPGs are an amazing medium to do that sort of thing. But just in general speaking, I don't think I'm the best at this sort of thing. I have my moments and I can get here and there, but you know, I usually have let's call them calculated moments when I know when I can add something. But I'm not there to kind of like throw words at the wall that don't just for the sake of saying something, basically. Because that's usually how I've always worked. I've had this mentality of speak when you have something to say, which, yeah, can be in equal amounts good and bad. Everything good is good with measures, as life should tell you. Everything is good in small quantities. So, you know, you have to just be a bit to plan them around and figure out a healthy balance. But anyhow, I'm cutting this rant short just because we're getting into an ad break. And after this, I do want to get into beamsaber and talk about ttrpg shenanigans. So we are also keeping ourselves a bit on topic, not just full on rants. So yeah, I'll take a break now and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, there we go. Enough delay with the break. Sorry, it was a bit lengthier. Had to do a few things. But yeah, we should be fine. So, let's no longer delay it because we still have a bit to cover today. So we're looking at Beamsaber, which is a Forge in the Dark game, or aka a Blades in the Dark inspired system, focused quite heavily within the mecha sci-fi genre, like giant robot, space adventures. With where a lot of the themings and concepts that you encounter within mecha genres, especially when it comes to media out there, like animes, mangas, anything else in between, a lot of those themes can be also encountered there. Being a Forge in the Dark game, it facilitates a lot of roleplay. The dice rolls and most of the game systems are there to kind of push forward to the story and kind of facilitate this aspect of yes and, or or in some scenarios even a no but sort of scenarios, where you build up, you figure out what exactly is the goal that you want to achieve. You talk how exactly you want to do that. The game master is gonna offer you a perspective. Okay, this scenario might be a bit risky, or maybe in some scenario, which is usually the default state, or in some cases it might be desperate, meaning that failure is gonna be way worse. But a high risk, high reward sort of scenario. Or you can just go risky, which is the usual kind of default, or maybe even control scenarios where even failing will not offer you the worst of outcomes. You can still get yourself into a comfortable position, at the very least a worst case scenario, getting yourself back into a kind of like default risky position. But it's the idea of you're telling the game master, you're telling the table what exactly you want to achieve based on the existing parameters of the scenario, events, what exactly you want to do. The actions themselves or the process itself may have certain modifiers that are going to increase the likelihood or decrease the likelihood of success. Then you roll some dice, and based on that, you're going to receive an outcome of how well you're going to progress towards that goal, and what other challenges are going to come alongside it. That's kind of what I'm saying with the yes and sort of process, where it's all about this idea that even when you get not necessarily exactly as wanted scenario, but you're still progressing forward, you might progress forward, but with some additional challenges added on top of what you're normally doing. It also, it utilizes the clock system, which I'm pretty sure it's akin to most of the Blades of the Dark and Forge in the Dark games, where all of the actions that you're doing add or progress that clock or decrease that clock, depending on what exactly is the purpose of it, which allows you to fulfill that goal. It's a bit more all-encompassing. That clock could be used as a literal timer, as a way to figure out progress towards a general goal or objective. If you're talking about the missions, where you can set clocks for specific objectives of the mission, and as you're progressing through and doing actions meant to progress that clock, it slowly advances. And in some scenarios, they can also be there to define the actual enemies, be it as an entire group or even on an individual level. You're doing actions that can then decrease they can decrease the clock, and once the clock is at 0, or maybe even vice versa, the clock is progressed, the enemy has been defeated. So it's also like a way to facilitate elements of quite a storytelling hit points, let's call them, because it's not like actual quantifiable number of hit points. It's more of a how you progress there based on the actions you're doing and the outcome that you get out of those dice based on the actions you decided. And it's also nicer for the more improvisational encounters and scenarios, where you can just quickly, for example, you can quickly add a clock for for an unexpected combat encounter that you didn't necessarily plan out, but the actions within of the players kind of weave themselves towards that outcome. So even if you don't have a plan, you can easily just throw a bunch of enemies at just a singular clock that deals with the entire group. Once that clock is completed, the sudden combat encounter has been vanquished. and so on. So that allows a lot of flexibility. All of it is built around to tell a story, to tell along, you know, in a collaborative way, you with the players, and to push that story forward. It's not as, I don't think it's as stat heavy. We're gonna get an idea of that today, as we're gonna be looking within the pilot section of the character creation, or the character sheet process, because as I've said before the break, this game has multi-layers where you have where you have description of details on your pilot, details on your vehicle, as they call it, or mech, depending on how exactly you want to interpret that, and also details and features for your squad, which are determined by the players as a whole. So it's a lot more. It's a lot more in depth. It has a lot more depth to it than what Lancer does, and what I've kind of talked to before. So there's gonna be a lot more to cover. So that's why I'm doing these kind of segmented elements, where I'm just covering the pilots today. Next time we're gonna look at the mechs. Then we're gonna look at the squads, and then we'll figure out other elements, things like combat. Mission progression. What else do we have? Downtime activities. There's also the game master section, which is probably going to be split in like at least 2 parts from the looks of it, and we'll see what else. But for today, it's only the pilot, as before, as I've said in the past. Whenever I'm covering a book or anything of the sorts, I'm just looking at the general mechanics, general aspects of character creation, and guidelines given within elements of creating something within the system. The more in-depth aspects of, you know, choices or like elements of customization, those I'm leaving out for you to look at and for you to check out and read for yourself. So you also have an incentive to, you know, get the book yourself and look at it and support good ttrpg, great ttrpg offers. So I'm just here to look at the core mechanics and guidelines, and give myself an idea on how well structured the book is, and how well does the book guide you throughout the process. And today we're looking at the pilot section. I'm pretty sure we're going to look at it up until this chapter or section, or I'm not sure, subchapter, the pilot versus pilot and player versus player. The pilot's actually in depth. I don't think I'm gonna look at it. That seems like similar to how I would say would be like the skills system, or like you know, attributes and skills within other games, where, you know, you get more in-depth details on what exactly those skills allow you to do. Those are finer details that I don't see the point of covering here, unless, you know, the book itself is heavily focused on those elements, or at the very least. Or at the very least, there is not much else, or that's their main focus of doing all sorts of actions. How we've looked at Tactic Quest, for example, where character creation and the character development process is a lot more streamlined and compact. So that means that you have a lot more to do when it comes to actions, or the actions are basically the main story here, or the main show. While in this scenario, it's more about the storytelling and role-playing aspects, so we're here to see how exactly the general pieces are created and structured to facilitate those elements. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to delay it any longer. We're just going to look at it and just have an idea on what exactly can be done. So let me just zoom in at the pilot section. I do like the art pieces, they're really nice. So, pilot creation. Beamsaber is a game about pilots and their massive war machines. While the vehicles may get a lot of attention, they're just dead metal without their pilot. An empty husk waiting to be filled with potential. You are that potential. Pilots are the people who take a sliver of hope in a desperate situation and use it as a wedge to victory. Be the pilot. Find the sliver. The directions that follow are useful for creating your pilot step by step. However, you can jump to Appendix B if you want to randomly generate your pilot in part or in whole. So if you just want to go with the dice, go with the flow, just choose chaos when it comes to creation, you have those options, which I like as an alternative. I always do. So let's look at the general outline of steps. First step, choose a playbook. This will guide your pilot's method of carrying out a mission. We might look at a playbook like in just one of them in like a quick view of it. I don't think I'm gonna read it in detail, just so we have an idea on how it's structured. But as I said before, those are elements of those are a list of customizations, so I'm not gonna look heavily into them. Then the second step, add 3 starting action points from your chosen playbook to your character sheet. You can add action points in the following step. Note that no pilot action or vehicle action can exceed 2 points during character creation, so you have a bit of like a limited, so you know, you cannot be outfitted or some sort of like overpowered over, you know, one trick sort of character from the very get-go. Who are you before the war stole you from? This is your history. Put 1 point into a pilot or vehicle action that express it. So an element that adds to the storytelling and the aspect of narrative within your character. Then, how have you experienced the costs of war? This is your tragedy. I'm guessing these are like keywords that are going to be then greatly detailed within the following pages, and I'm guessing either there are going to be elements of storytelling, maybe even with some mechanical tie-ins, because I always like that aspect of games where the element of role-play and backstory and storytelling ties and somehow is interweaved and interconnected with the mechanics. So that at that point it means that, you know, you have a reason to create these strategies. You're not just there to for the game master to then utilize, because depending on the group, sometimes the game master might not have the time, energy, or just maybe it's not a good fit. So having something else that ties you with these elements of storytelling and elements of character embellishment, not necessarily embellishment, character, you know, description to add on, you know, incentivize good behaviors. That's basically, if you want to incentivize roleplay, add benefits to that roleplay. What were you doing after your tragedy, but before you joined the squad? This is your opening. Put 1 point into a pilot or vehicle that expresses it. Then, what do you hope to change in the world? This is your drive. Then you assign 3 points by dividing them among the vehicle actions. So basically a point per vehicle action of your choice. Then you put 2 points split between any pilot and or vehicle action. You should have now a total of 10 points, action points allocated. 5, 6, 7, 10, yeah, with the 3 action points, yeah. Makes sense. But still with the aspect that you can have higher than 2 per action. Then you choose an ability from your playbook. You write your name, pronouns, call sign, and look. You then write the names of your squad mates on your connection sheet. Sorry, I always do that. Input 1 tick in their connection clock. Create 1 belief that you have about each other pilot, or choose an example belief listed in any playbook. So you already have some inner connections, so you already can like build some perceived notions between each player character. Which is interesting. So at the very least, so it starts with a base. It's not going to be out there impressions, necessarily first impressions, without any sort of establishment before the session starts, which, you know, depending on the group can be cannot be advantageous to just depending on how well everyone like facilitates the elements of roleplay and kind of get in a perspective. And 12. The 12th step, if the player squad hasn't yet been created, then you move to squad creation. Yeah, 12 steps. Most of them, if not all of them, are heavily connected to role-playing and detailing and backstory and storytelling and detailing what is the purpose and how exactly does your character fit within the war, and how exactly has this war affected them and what exactly it means to them. So, because we had a lot of interesting keywords mentioned, let's have a look at them. History, tragedy, and opening. The war affected everyone. The lucky ones only experience rationing day to day, but many more face some form of tragedy. The pilots are not solely tragic figures through. They've had histories before the war, and they found ways to live before joining the squad. Don't worry about fully fleshing out your pilot's history, tragedy, and opening at character creation. A single detail for each is enough, as you will develop the character through play. Discovering who they are is part of the game. It also leaves room to bring out other squad mates into the backstory. If you have a lot of backstory details that interest you, keep them. Just be open to including new details as the game progresses. Yeah, it's always important to be flexible about it. It's something I've learned to kind of do in recent years, and because I've always been a bit of that person, I'll be honest, with kind of the long ass backstories. I still do it to an extent, but I've been a bit more flexible, or at least I've been a bit more putting out the details that I feel like are worth it, or like in the immediate moment I feel like are interesting. Elements of like NPCs, maybe a quick the backstories these days I've kept them way shorter. I'm trying to do my best to have them way shorter, and trying to detail other elements that are going to be more useful, like connected NPCs, maybe points of interest and locations that might be of interest to me, and anything else of that kind of like facility. And then after that I'm kind of keeping it open. Like I'm just like even with the NPCs, even though that they could be important NPCs or like NPCs heavily connected to the character, like family for example, I'm writing down just a quick few lines about them, basically a few lines that equally describe them visually and as a personality, but don't go in depth with it. And then I kind of leave it either depending on how the story progresses, and maybe I'm also leaving it a bit to the game master to bring their own twists and maybe their own surprises to the story. Or, you know, maybe at some point I realize that, hey, this could I reach a point in the campaign where there is this interesting story beat that could be connected to my character, that I could adapt as part of, I don't know, this NPC, or as part of this side of the backstory that I've not fully fleshed out. So let me do it now. Yeah, having a bit of flexibility in story is nice, especially later on if you have players that might have common ground or common connections. It's always nice to put together something collaboratively. For example, I've done it in the charity one shot for D&D 1, I forgot the name, the hypermarket, the one made by the one that Uncle Prof, Unplugged Prof has done it, which has been amazing. I loved that campaign. I'm just really bad with names. And I've done it with Pixel, Papa Mio, my model rigger, where we the two of us had a duo of kobolds that, you know, each of them have their own stories and each of them come from different places and different backgrounds, but seeing that we've had this connection of, hey, we both made kobolds, maybe I don't know, maybe right before we came to the point of interest, maybe we've met each other, maybe there's something with each other that kind of connects with us because, you know, we are of the same kin. Maybe we're gonna feel a bit more comfortable with each other and immediately kind of have a quick bond. So that we quickly created that, and even added elements of personal backstory to each other, and really build up something really interesting that I've really loved. I've missed those two characters. I do. They've been a lot of fun. But anyways, as I said, it makes the experience a lot more engaging and way more fun because, you know, you have someone else that can join into your storytelling and basically, you know, have an interesting back and forths. Of course, sometimes it can also happen purely accidental. How for some reason, I've created some foil or some sort of interconnected or vaguely, not necessarily adversarial, but sometimes could be very opposing sort of character to Charon's character in our Escalation Crew campaigns or actual plays. I don't know how. because the way we've done it, or at least the way I kind of like to do character creation a lot of times, is I like to some elements to keep them to myself and just have them just be, you know, uncovered and discovered in story. And with that group, we've, at least with some of the campaigns we've done in the past, we've limited ourselves in how much interconnected storylines we have with each other. And so because of that, me and Karen don't really discuss too much about like what exactly is connected between our characters or what exactly is the relationship before we start. And every time we reveal to each other like, hey, this is my character, hey, this is my character, like, the fuck, how do we always do this? Like, it happened. Damien and Ambrose have been one that kind of evolved in play. That one was not necessarily designed by and kind of shifted that way as part of storytelling and as part of like roleplay into an actual in the actual session. While with the other ones, it had just happened as we created a character. We kind of like looked at them and was like, huh. Or as we kind of like played them, we realized that, huh, we have weirdly opposing ideals somehow for some reason. And I don't know how each time we kind of like slot each other into those sections. I don't know, it's weird. Anyways, side tangents. Yeah, and here, you know, we have a quick kind of like rundown of a full name of a character with a full name. Blackberry Reach call sign Tower. As passed, we have Link the Sudat performer. I'm guessing some sort of not sure, like musician or something like that. Framed for murder, serving drinks in dive bars. Oh, I think we're actually getting here a quick rundown of that. Oh no, that's Keiko. So, I don't want to be a pilot. I don't mean that like I do about farming, where I started working and it wasn't so bad, even if I do wish I was somewhere else sometimes. Was I supposed to be happy about this? I feel like I remember some of the older kids talking about how cool it would be to be a pilot, but that was such a while ago. They probably thought they were going to be heroes, orphans winning the war for the church. They didn't even get to be martyrs. We got notices that 2 of them had died. Just a single page from a form letter for each of them. The other 2, we didn't hear anything at all. We just knew. The next group was more scared than anything. After that, I don't think anyone went around making promises before they left. I've made it pretty clear to everyone I know that I wanted nothing to do with the war. But here I am. The Church of the Celestial Myriad is short on soldiers, and I have combat aptitude, or some other nonsense. I'm the best around at piloting Bert, and Harrow knows almost everything I've gotten myself into, and won. Putting that way, I guess that's the whole cenotaph. Bunch of people who don't want to be here, but they're too good at what they do to go unnoticed. From the Journal of Keiko, Pitchfork, Tuesday. Yeah, interesting ways of kind of like getting storytelling. So, history. A pilot's history is who they were before the tragedy. Generally, this was a fairly mundane existence where the war was not something that filled their every thought. Sure, there was rationing, the neighbor's kids got conscripted, and your second cousin moved back with their parents after the space station they lived on got destroyed. But you could go most days without thinking about things like that. Don't worry about the tragedy looming in your future, because for now, life is normal. When a pilot expresses their history during play, they get XP at the end of a session. Okay. Good way to kind of facilitate, bringing your story forward. Play example of histories, like you can be an academic, university professor or student, researcher, doctor, journalist, or some other person who furthers knowledge. Can be in labor, art, law, criminal, military, entertainment, political, spiritual, family, and even trade. So you can be of any sort of background. It doesn't matter. Once you're in the war, you're for some reason or another, either of your own desires or not, as we've seen as an example of storytelling with the example character. Then, with tragedies, a pilot's tragedy is the event that propels them into their involvement in the war. It might be the loss of loved ones, being the target of accusations regardless of the truth, or witnessing an atrocity. It might not put them immediately into a squad, but it does put them on a course where they get closer to the controls of War Machine day by day. When a pilot expresses their tragedy during play, they get XP at the end of a session. For example, strategies, hid in a mass grave. Oh my god, that's actually dark. Lone survivor of a militia. Friends started disappearing. Family killed as collateral damage. Orbital station home used as a kinetic weapon. Is this a reference to Gundam? I wonder if other ones have been used as references to other animes. Unwillingly experimented on by unethical researchers. But to be fair, I think that's very generic. Like when it comes to a plot point. Exiled from a homeland, falsely charged with a major crime. Shown the lie of their own life. Participated in a failed coup or mutiny. Yeah. There is some sort of tragedy. But yeah, this one is hyper specific to me. Then, as openings, a pilot opening reveals what they did with their life before they joined the squad. It's the time between their tragedy and the opening of the game. Some will be in a deep depression, possibly at the bottom of bottle. Others will be training hard to get their revenge. A few will continue with their lives, pretending that their faith is not irrevocably changed and drawn to the war. All will be forced into a new life at the start of the game. When a pilot expresses their opening during play, they get XP at the end of the session. So, as opening, building a custom vehicle from spare parts, avoiding people with long voyages to transport jobs, studying military strategy in preparation for war. Like this one is very straightforward, like yeah, you just prepped yourself for this. Catching deserters as a bounty hunter, stuck in prison for petty crimes, driving a taxi in areas autocars can't navigate, tending to the needs of an admiral as their valet, getting by as a sex worker, shuffling papers in a cubicle farm, or serving drinks in a rundown bar. As we got the example with the character. Yeah, all of these are just elements of fleshing out the story, but hey, you get some mechanical benefits, that being XP, by bringing those forward in play. We have mechanical encouragements of actually, actually facilitating roleplay. So, pilot actions and attributes. When a pilot acts as himself without their vehicle, their player selects the pilot action that is most suitable to the situation. There are 12 actions broken up into 3 attribute groups. An attribute is a loose description used for determining resistance rolls. You can find the mention of resistance rolls earlier in the book. We talked about it last time. It's a way to kind of avoid certain outcomes. And the 3 attributes are insight, actions involving awareness and observation, prowess, actions involving physicality and strength, and resolve, actions involving socializing and networking. When a player creates a pilot, they can't assign more than 2 points in an action. Once they enter play, all pilots' action ratings max out at 4 points. However, the Mastery Squad upgrade is required to unlock the 4th. Pilots have access to the following actions. So, for insight, these actions that rely upon a pilot's sharp insights. You have Hunt for tracking a long distance precision, Study for inspecting details and evidence, Survey for observing surroundings and possible outcomes, Engineering for adjusting and creating devices and mechanisms, and then Prowess. These actions make use of physical prowess. You have Finesse for using manual dexterity, Prowl for moving with grace and power, Struggle for engaging in close quarter combat, and Wreck for applying brute force. And the last one, Resolve. They represent the pilot's resolve when communicating is of the utmost importance. We have Command for compelling quick obedience, Consort for socializing with others, Interface for using complex digital equipment, and Sway for influencing through guile, charm, or debate. Quick rundown, easy coverage of most of the main actions. I always like seeing how every system kind of interprets some of the more core forms of play and core actions that a player would do in a ttrpg and how exactly they are grouped together. And I like how in here you can see equal benefits that could be like mechanical, you have aspects of it that are present in all three. You have engineering for insights. You could say finesse to an extent could also be part of it, and interface as part of digital equipment interactivity. So you have certain mechanical actions benefit mechanical in a literal mechanics, not in as the mechanics of the game, and so on. Hunt, prowl, command could be a form of aspects of combat, or more like covert forms of combat. So yeah, you have they're also like interestingly spread, so it doesn't feel like all of them are weighted down into one section. So if you want something that is heavily on the mechanics, on the mechanical side, you just have to focus on insights. You also have a bit in prowess, and also a bit in resolve. Then you have pilot name, call sign, and pronouns. Names have power. Some are given to us, some were chosen for ourselves. A pilot's name and call sign can come from any number of sources and take on a variety of styling. Many will be recognizable as common names, some will read as nouns or verbs, and others will be completely unfamiliar. But all are acceptable and should be respected when used in good faith. Like, the player is not there to just make mock either. What's more important is how names and call signs are used by the pilots they belong to, by their squad mates, and by the NPCs. Some characters use names for acquaintances, but will use the call signs for their friends. Some view their names negatively and adopt their call sign in its place. The opposite of these examples can be true as well, with names taking place of pride while their call sign is an unpleasant moniker. For example, Harrow Grey or Demon calls Keiko Tuesday or Pitchfork by her first name because he knew her when she was a child. But he refers to Blackberry Reach Tower and Coriander Belouve Dredge and Clarissa Agden Scarecrow by their call sign. This suits Dredge just fine because Poe feels disconnected from the name Coriander and considers it for dead name. Preferring that Ko would never have to see it again. Ko is Dredge. So interesting interplays and aspects of characterization that can add a lot more depth to your character. Then you have players selected their pilot names, which they can be based on anything. Don't be afraid to go with strange names like Arrow Slide or Territory Jazz. Try saying the name aloud a couple of times to see if you like how it sounds, because there's a possibility that other people are there's gonna be players who are gonna call you like that, and based on how you view that call, in character, I mean, and not necessarily out of character, that's that's something for you to then take into account. And if you don't like on a fundamental level, you just simply do not like or vibe with the name, just change it up. There are two main ways to pick a call sign. The player chooses it for their pilot, or the rest of the squad chooses it in character. The former option is much like picking a name. Go for something that you like. You should also consider the call sign's origin and whether your pilot likes what it means. Yeah, because in most situations, I think I'm pretty sure at the very least military, a lot of the call signs just come from they describe something about the person, soldier, individual that they've done while serving, be it during training, be it as part of a squad. Something that it's kind of part of their character, and it's in some scenarios the call sign is also like an element of brotherhood, an element that there is a connection, there is something that an inside knowledge or an inside joke that only we know. So, and this call sign is for us and to kind of show our camaraderie in some scenarios, while in others it could also be something mocking, something embarrassing, and who knows what else. Yeah, it's also important. That adds because it adds a lot to the character. It adds a lot to the characterization. I think maybe in some scenarios more than the name, although even the name given can be as well, especially in scenarios like how it was mentioned here with Coriander, as they consider it a dead name. Yeah. But if the rest of your squad picks your call sign, it's best if everyone at the table agrees to also let others choose their call sign too. Because you know, it's only fair. I feel like it feels a bit unfair to just leave it to one person and they just get a bit of mocking. So you know, equal treatment basically. If everyone is fine with the way the method of creating a call sign is done, then it should be unanimously agreed. And then everyone should be comfortable with those call signs by the end of it. If you do, make sure you complete one mission and one downtime phase together before choosing call signs for each other. So there is also an actual element of storytelling of maybe there is something that happens within the mission that gives you an inspiration for the call sign. Seeing someone in action gives a better sense of each pilot's personality, style, and approach to solving problems. You then discuss in character and out of character, or switching between the two about possible options for the pilot's call sign. Make sure every player is comfortable with their call sign, because being called something you dislike every session will likely ruin the fun. So yeah, it's okay if the pilot dislikes their call sign, so long as the player likes it. Like yeah, as I said, there's one thing that in character to be a dislike, it's another for it to be a dislike out of character. Pronouns are just as important and powerful as names. They are a key part in expressing a person's identity, as they signal a pilot's relationship to their gender. Some people use binary pronouns, you know, obvious she, her, he, him. Some will use non-binary, such as they, them, or co-core. I've not seen co-core, honestly. Okay, so that was what it meant here. Core, dead name, or co is reg. Oh, interesting. It's the first time I've actually encountered it. As someone who's on the NB adjacent spectrum, let's call it, I've not really studied or looked too heavily into like alternatives. I've just been fine with they, personally, so interesting. Some will use a combinations of multiple sets, like she, they, or they, co. Some have no preference at all, so long as they are said with respect, any and all. Some use different pronouns in a different situation, perhaps because one is set for formal relationships and another is for informal, or because their gender expression shifts across time. Some use pronouns that are extremely prevalent in the lives of English speakers who are contemporary with this game's creation, such as she, her, or he, him, and others will use pronouns from outside of the English or neo-pronouns, such as core or z, zer. I've seen Caesar in the past. I've not really, let's say, encountered it in the wilds actually used by people. So yeah, interesting to see these facets, and I do like it. It's a cool detail to have here. But regardless of how you use your pronouns, respectfully use the correct pronouns of the players and characters at the table. Again, all of these are done for characterization and to tell something about the character. They are not there to necessarily be looked out. So be respectful. They're there to facilitate the story. They're not there to mock by any means or create some sort of like parody. So be respectful whenever these whenever this is made clarified. Because as I've encountered myself, some people have a heavy connection of identity with their characters, and in some scenarios, and some people choose the preferred gender. Their identifying gender also has their prevalent preferred gender for their characters across the board. So being disrespectful in character for some can then translate of being disrespectful towards themselves. So that's an important factor to take into account. It's be respectful, because it could be an important factor for them as an individual, not just as part of the play experience. Me personally, I'm completely fine. I've always created whatever I felt like for that in that moment for that character. I went, currently, I think right now, currently active, I have Kati, which is she, her, very femme inclined. I do have our Pathfinder character who are non-binary, who are they, them. Although in a very shenanigans sort of way, as those are going to be involved. And I've had he, him, Damien, quite obvious is the one of them. Iv has been another one who we've had in the past. Also, and one that we've actually had with an it pronoun, which is something that a few out here, and I know quite a few people who utilize the object pronouns, let's call them. I've had my kobold, Sib. He utilizes he, it. It's been a lot of fun. And I don't know, occasionally me personally, I will sometimes use the royal we. I don't know, it just comes naturally. But anyways, ranting. But a thing that I really like is here you actually get a table of pronouns in all their forms. You know, the nominative form, accusative, possessive, and reflexive. So really cool, so you don't get them confused, especially if you're not familiar with the kokor or zizer, and some people prefer those. And even mentions here, Demon likes sweet and sour sauce on chicken nuggets. Tower prefers honey mustard with theirs, but Drench wants core nuggets without toppings. I think you pronounce it as core nuggets. I'm guessing and hoping. We'll see. But yeah, Mecha Media has a long history of examining what bodies, identity, gender, and sexuality mean through the relationship between pilots and their gigantic robotic forms. Because there is an analogy of identity there, obviously, across the mecha, sci-fi, robot genres. Beamsaber is no different. Pilot playbooks intentionally provide vehicle options that let players explore themes of bodies, identity, gender, and sexuality through their character, so long as no lines or veils are broken, which we actually have mentions of lines and veil as part of consent forms later in the book, which is really cool. I always like when consent forms are added as part of the Game Master and session prep guidelines. But there's the very real possibility that player may explore a transition narrative with their pilot. A character might have a name Hana and use she/her pronouns at the start of the game, but they can actually always change. If they decide that they/them pronouns and a different name feel right during the campaign, they can make that swap. Likewise, a character can shift primarily using their call sign to using their names and vice versa. Here are some questions to consider when making your pilot. What does your character's call sign mean to them? How did they get that call sign? How do they feel about it? What's your character's relationship with their pronouns? And how do they feel about how they are perceived? So, you have a lot of themes there, because that is a heavy aspect within the mecha genre, and you see it out of there. In some of them have it in many themes, as mentioned here, aspects of body, sexuality, gender, identity. All of it is across the board, because we're exploring sci-fi where there is an element of existentialism, surrealism, even elements of eternalism that get explored throughout elements of sci-fi. It's always nice to see. But anyways, I'm gonna take a quick break as an ad is just about to come up, and I will return after the ad break is over. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, there we go. Let's continue. So, we looked at things like pilot names, pronouns, how they identify and perceive themselves. Now let's look at how pilot looks in a more physical sense of things. Pilots in Pilots in Beamsaber come from all walks of life. Some are grizzled veterans, other former pop idols. A few are teens trying to cope with a newfound situation. Either way, players get to decide how the game would perceive their pilot. There is no codified prejudice in Beamsaber. Here are some suggestions of how to describe their appearance. Face, it could be masks, beautiful, scarred, young, decorated, rugged, calm. Eyes, artificial, cold, mocking, trusting, trustworthy, uncertain, and warm. Hair, flowing, military, punk, braided, poofy, slick. Body, big, compact, flabby, muscular, scarred, skinny, toned, voluptuous. And outfit, military, ornate, formal, vintage, practical, casual, scavenge. And here we get a few looks and even a few ideas of, you don't have to just keep yourself with the concept of human. It can also be a bit above human. Or just, adjacent, because we are talking about sci-fi aspects. There could be some sort of like genetic enhancements or alterations that could exist within the universe if that's something that you want there as an option of customization. So, pilots, chronic illness, and disability. Anyone can become a pilot regardless of their age, health, or ability. They just need to end up behind the controls of a vehicle. To that end, there are two ways to handle disability and chronic illness in beamsaber. The first is that a pilot's tools that help them deal with a disability, be it an insulin pump, a wheelchair, prosthetic limbs, and so on, function exactly like any other gear. They take up load, and the pilot's experience with a disability may modify position and or effect depending on the scenario. The second option is for the disability aids to be a part of the pilot's look. The disability tools don't take up load and don't provide mechanical benefits. In both cases, pilot's physicality never gives them a penalty or is part of an obstacle to be overcome unless the player controlling that pilot wants that to happen. If a player doesn't find challenges related to their pilot's body interesting, they will never appear. So this is something that you should have a conversation with the player who decides to have a pilot with some sort of illness or disability, and how exactly you would want that to be handled. If they feel like they want the aspect of disability to be on occasions, even if on occasion a challenge, or just completely just no, this is an aspect of their character, but they can still achieve all the goals the same way anyone else can. Kind of tell a different sort of story with it. And as an example, we get Genevieve's pilot has a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, and often uses supplemental oxygen to help manage it. However, Genevieve isn't interested in stories about how that might be an obstacle to overcome, so they decide that it is only part of their pilot's look, an ever-present oxygen mask. Thus, that disability will never impact play. The mask, or other medications their pilot might use, will never affect position and effect, never be the source of a consequence, and never be an impediment in the narrative. It's purely for visuals and to tell something about the character. Callie, though, wants to see how having difficulty walking while in the war would impact his pilot's story. So he decides that he has a manual wheelchair that is 0 load when used and 1 load when carried. While in his vehicle, Kelly pursues an enemy through an abandoned town street and needs to make a maneuver to roll to keep up. The Game Master says that this will be a risky standard, but Kelly suggests that it should be risky great. I've got a lot of, by the reasons that I've got a lot of experience in my wheelchair, giving me an innate sense of physics that helps me work with and against the natural slopes of the ground. Nothing is truly flat, and I can use that to squeeze out a bit of extra speed. The Game Master agrees, so Kelly has an opportunity to make gains that might surprise his target. So, you can also see with disadvantages come advantages, and it's also another aspect of telling a story and telling something about your character, that even those who, from the first perspective, they might look at a disadvantageous position, they know how to use their state of being to their own advantage. They know how to use their strengths over their weaknesses and gain equal footing, at the very least, to those of abled positions. But these have been just general aspects of characterization. Now let's look at drives. What do you want to change in the world? Each pilot has an ambition, regardless of how they end up in the war. Maybe they want revenge on the squad that destroyed their village. Perhaps they want to climb the ladder and reach a position of power in their faction. Then there's the always relevant live happily ever after. Write down your pilot's drive in a brief sentence that explains what the pilot hopes to change in the world. A pilot's drive comes with two 4-tick drive clocks, which track progress towards that change. There are 3 ways a pilot can add to their drive clocks. Whether a pilot completes a long-term project and furthers their drive, they may add 1 tick to a drive clock. This tick is in addition to the normal benefits of completing that project. Second, if a pilot does something new that furthers their drive, they may add 1 tick as part of their end of session reward process. And finally, the third option, the third way actually, calling in favors from your patron faction. Relationship must be at least of a +1, or other squads relationship must be a +3. May add 1 tick at the cost of lowering your squad's relationship with your patron faction by 1, or lowering your squad status with the other squad by 3. Ask other players for their permission first, as this decision affects the whole squad. Again, cooperative storytelling, if you feel like there is something there that can add to the story as a whole, as a group, because lowering relationship will also add challenges into the future where they can't ask for other favors, which can come interestingly into play. But repeating an action during a mission or a long-term project during downtime won't give you extra ticks to your drive clocks. It doesn't matter how many times you record an album, only the first one helps you become a pop idol. If you choose a drive that seems too big or amorphous to affect, it's okay to receive ticks for relatively small actions. For example, if your drive is to remove the orbital debris cloud, you could get a tick for suggesting that a salvage squad could turn a profit by taking the cloud apart. Focus on moving 1 step at a time, and you'll make the journey before you know it. And I feel like this is also like a nice life lesson, you know. Deconstruct the problems into its core, bare, fundamental issues, and just use those simple step-by-step solutions first before, you know, before you start thinking on a grander scale. And those add to the progress, even in real life. And here are some examples of drives and their progress. For example, kill the man responsible for destroying my hometown. Progress could be defeat your rival, learn their weakness, or find out where they sleep. Become a famous pop idol. Get a record deal, record an album, perform for a crowd. High ranking position in the military. Is to help a supervisor advance. Weaken a peer's political position. Prove your competence. Build a horse ranch away from the war. Acquire land in a safe place. Acquire a few quality horses. Hire some ranchers. And develop a weapon that could end the war. Develop an overlooked science into something deadly. Prove that it can be controlled. Weaponize it on mass scale. On mass scales. Max produce it. And make sure that my friends will have a good life. Start a trust fund for your friends. Help them avoid getting a scar. Take the blame for a disaster. So, some good examples. Although, once again, to clarify, the progress, you don't have to predetermine it. This is something that happens as you develop, as you go through the story. These could be things that naturally develop. It's not. You don't have to have them figure out from the very beginning. You just need your drive. The progress here defines like actions that push that clock forward, but it's not all the actions that you don't necessarily have to have them set up. Now, drives tell the game master what the player is interested in struggling towards. If the pilot's drive is getting a high ranking position in the military, it suggests gaining rank is a difficult task, and in this particular campaign, or possibly for that pilot. In other campaigns, a single long-term project might be sufficient to achieve that goal. But when a player chooses a drive, the pilot's resulting story arc is lengthened and thus harder to achieve. So, you know, for the sake of telling the story, even if by normal means whatever they ask as a goal might be easily achievable, for them it is a challenge. For them it's gonna be a process. So create a reason alongside with your player of why this is a journey and not just a task for them specifically and not someone else. Also, drives also helps bring nearly impossible goals much closer. For example, if a pilot's drive is to make Journey City the capital of the Evangelion Empire, that goal moves into the realm of fictional possibility. Actions that wouldn't normally shift the narrative towards that unlikely or impossible goal have the power to make a difference. Long-term project to become pen pals with the Regent General Bellarmine could add one tick to that drive clock, opening the door for the pilot to convince the region that they should move the Evangelion capital. The one thing drives can't do is end the war. There are too many pressures from too many sources for one person or one squad to stop it. You could, however, shift the nature of the war by changing how or why it is fought. You can change the motive, but you cannot change the outcome. Yeah, you can change the motive and method, but not the outcome. Which I think it's also a grander aspect of its own way of telling, of putting a message for, I would say. You know, what these war mean. Now, spending drive. A player may spend one or more completed drive clocks at any time to change the world. The more clocks spent at once, the bigger the change. Spending one drive clock to negate harm or damage for any level, change an action roll or fortune roll to result to a 6, or give another pilot all 4 benefits on an assist. Damn, that's a powerful one. You can spend 2 drive clocks to change the life circumstances of one person. This is the only way to permanently defeat a rival. So the rivals will always escape somehow. To make some interesting characterization, I guess. When you spend 3 drive clocks to change the circumstances of a squad, and you spend 4 of them to change the circumstances of a faction. Anytime you spend a drive clock, in addition to the normal benefits, you can choose to rewrite your drive. So you can create another drive that is related to your overall to your character overall, because maybe your goals shift as the story develops and you no longer are fighting for the same reasons. Once a drive clock has been spent, it is emptied of all ticks. You can immediately start taking actions to refill it by pursuing your drive, whether you changed it when you spent your clock or kept it the same. Now, a pilot only has 2 drive clocks, so multiple pilots must spend their drive clocks to change circumstances of a squad or faction, so it is a collaborative effort, this one. If 2 or more pilots spend their drive clocks on a single change, designate one pilot as the leader. Fictionally, the leader is the one who came up with the idea, presented the evidence, organized the squad, and generally took charge to make the change happen. Every other pilot who spent a drive clock adds 1 tick to their connection clock with their leader. The leader adds 1 tick to their connection clock with everyone else who spent a drive clock, because you've done something collaborative and made a big change. Then the Game Master and players interpret the change in circumstances based on their campaign and their game's tone. Always discuss people's boundaries and the impact these changes may bring before bringing them to bear. In a game where the pilots are narratively powerful, change might mean convincing the Evangelion Empire to become a constitutional monarchy, giving political power to the masses. In a less heroic game, spending 4 drive clocks might mean that the Evangelion Child Empress reaches adulthood in good health. Spending drive clocks is a matter of scale. While the example about the Child Empress reaching adulthood took 4 drives, it could also be a 2 drive clock change instead. The difference would be that the 4 clocks see the Empress grow up, and this changes the empire itself, while spending 2 means that she grows up but is ineffectual and becomes a footnote in history. So it's all about impact. The existence of the drive clocks as a resource does not remove the possibility of making change without spending them, so long as that change falls outside every pilot's drive. If a pilot's drive is to destroy the Dark Room, a tier 2 squad, they will need to spend 3 drive clocks to do it. But if they have the opportunity to destroy a different squad and no other pilot has a squad involved in their drive, then no clocks are needed to be spent. So as long as they are not part of their character's drive or character's overall goals, then it can be achieved without spending clocks. Conversely, drive clocks can be spent to change circumstances of individuals or groups that are not related any pilot's drive, instead of setting up opportunities in the fiction to change their situation. And lastly, check to see if spending your drive clocks will impact the other players. Some pilots have rivals that have narrative importance to them, and these rivals are usually parts of a squad or a faction. Rivalries are personal, so players cannot spend drive clocks to eliminate another player's rival without their permission. However, a rivalry doesn't prevent a player from destroying the rival's squad. The rival will always survive and cannot be taken out in such a manner. So the rival is always going to be an ever-present foil for each of the characters. And I kind of like this aspect of storytelling because we've had that side with even with our Gestalt game of basically the classic opposing adventuring party or evil adventuring party, or however you want to call it, or ideally different. It's interesting of having someone out there who's seen as your foil, who's seen to some extent as an opposite, and have someone to kind of always kind of like have this interesting back and forth and motive to pursue, compared to, so this always gives you like something to look for, a motive to kind of engage yourself with the story, with the narrative, as most likely within the narrative the rivals are going to be connected, so your character would be interested to pursue the narrative to reach that rival. Now, as an example, Dredge, Tower, and Unlucky are having a tense meeting with Tucer, Bloodless, Hotberg, the Dredge's rival from the Mark of Saints. Senior Kin Arrow Slide of the Rites of the Ascent, and who is connected to Unlucky through his drive of Learn Why Arrow Slide Stole My Proxy, and Pars Piani of the Dark Room, who are connected to Tower's drive of Destroy the Dark Room. In this situation, killing Hotberg requires spending 2 drive clocks and completing her challenge clock because she's a rival. Killing Piani would be as simple as getting a successful action roll or completing a clock because she isn't a rival nor she is explicitly included in anyone's drive. There are other Dark Tower members that can pursue for their drive. Killing Slide would not require 2 drives because he isn't Unlucky's rival, but that path should absolutely be discussed with Unlucky's player as it will affect his drive. Alternatively, Piani and Slide could instantly be slain by spending 2 drive clocks on each of them if the players don't want to go through the trouble of finishing them off normally. If the pilots want to destroy the March of Science or Rite of Ascent, they may do so under suitable narrative circumstances, such as filling a progress clock called Get the Rites Excommunicated without spending 3 drive clocks. However, because the March of Saints are a tier 5 and the rites are a tier 1, the complexity of destroying each will vastly differ. The former will likely require multiple long-term projects and a mission, while the latter could be destroyed in one mission by getting all the members in one room and blowing it up. It's all about complexities. Alternatively, the squad could spend 3 drive clocks to destroy either squad. Doing so would negate the need of projects and missions, but Hotberg would survive as she is Dredge's rival. Slide would likely survive as he is explicitly part of Unlucky's drive. However, getting rid of the Dark Room is more complicated since the squad is directly tied to the pilot's drive. Removing the Dark Room therefore requires spending 3 drive clocks in addition to building the appropriate fictional positioning. So, you have to build up you have to build up the opportunity for this narrative to happen, and then utilize the required resources for that to outcome to be fulfilled. So there's reasons for you to so there's multiple reasons for you to kind of engage yourself towards that goal. The changes wrought by spending drives can build on each other. For example, if the Evangelion Empire becomes a constitutional monarchy, a later expenditure of 4 drives could put it and the democratic federate systems into a true alliance, with no betrayal foreshadowed. You can combine a series of drive clocks to effect change one step at a time. However, you must spend your drive clocks according to the scale of the change. If 2 drive clocks are spent putting an ally in a position of Evangelion's power, the squad could also spend another 4 to have that ally enact the faction's move into a constitutional monarchy. So you basically can set up the events utilizing the drive clocks, which is an interesting tool to have. But when you figure with all of this, how do you fulfill a drive? Sometimes spending enough drive clocks will create a narrative point where the pilot should win the game. When 2 drive clocks are spent to build a horse ranch away from the war, it would make a lot of sense for that pilot to leave the squad for retirement on said ranch. There is nothing wrong with this outcome, though sometimes it can take the players and game master by surprise, even the player who just filled their pilot's drive. If that happens, everyone should discuss what that means for the pilot, the squad, and the campaign. Some of these discussions will depend on the expectations discussed in session 0. It's going to be outlined in the game master section, but it will also depend on how everyone feels in the moment. Consider the following questions when retiring a character under these circumstances. Is the pilot staying with the squad, becoming an NPC, or are you leaving the game entirely? If the pilot stays with the squad, can they leave at any time now that they have fulfilled their drive, or is there something keeping them around? If the pilot leaves, will the player also leave the game? Will they begin playing a familiar NPC, or will they introduce an entirely new character? Adding new pilots is detailed in a later section of the chapter. Does the squad stay the same? Does it gain a new patron or adopt a new squad playbook, or does it disband entirely? And does the campaign continue, or has the fulfillment of this drive completed the campaign's narrative? Which is ending a campaign is detailed in the game mastery chapter. So all these are important factors because you never know. Sometimes some characters might still have additional ties that they have created to give themselves reason to stay around. For example, that's something I kind of like figure out with Damien. I realized that after Damien, not too long after Damien got himself into being a vampire, as things developed and storylines developed and new layers of the character were kind of uncovered. The relationship with Hana and the kid they have together. I realized that Damien would now have different priorities and different goals, where he would not be interested, not necessarily interested, but in which he would not want to risk himself to continuously be involved in the hunter business that the group, the hunter cell he was part of, was basically doing, because he would risk putting himself as a target over and over again and make himself notice by higher playing individuals that he does not want to attract. So here I realized at some point that Damien would retire. Even if the chronicle would continue, Damien would retire. And I figure out like a reason for him to at the very least stay for a while longer, just so he doesn't just flip out immediately. There were still like some goals to fulfill regarding the aspect of why he would leave, that being a family, as Felicia was still out, was still MIA, her whereabouts were unknown. Hana was still connected to the technocracy and NWO to some extent, so we needed to be disconnected through that as well, and made sure that nothing, there was no loose ends on that side, and then make sure that the rest of the group is free to go on a path without his assistance, and he can just fulfill whatever obligations he had left. He felt he was still required to fulfill for the group, and then just step out. Now, in the end, all of it kind of lined up with the general conclusion of the chronicle, but that was a thought process that I had. So that's something always good to have and discuss with your game master, and as well with the rest of your group, because that's also a kind of thing. To be transparent with your group, you don't just up and leave and then bring some new NPC, because depending on how the story has evolved, how trusting the rest of the party is to other people, you might have a hard time to bring someone new without bringing out a fair warning and without offering some reasons and possibilities of why they would trust and bring this character to the fold. As especially with our hunter self, the group has become very paranoid when it comes to new people, and bringing others to the fold, it has really kind of formed this, not necessarily found family, but definitely this aspect of we are a group of misfits that we've clicked together in some way or another, and that's it. All of us have went with bullshit, and we know that we can't bring others to this bullshit because it's gonna bring us more bullshit that we do not want to deal with, and that person might also cause problems to us. So we don't want more people in here. Just the core that we trust, and that's it. So, that's always an important discussion to have. In our case, of course, it happened somehow that all the loose ends kind of led to also the disband of the entire crew and the end of the chronicle, and which brought forth a new one not long after. So yeah, that was interesting. But anyways, back to discussions here. Lastly, the changes from spending drive must make sense for your story. If a pilot has aggressively fought against their rival for the whole campaign, it's a stretch to spend 2 drive clocks so the rival switches sides and aligns with the squad. They're most likely going to die. Likewise, spending 2 drive clocks against a rival who has just appeared in the mission will not immediately take them out, but it will seal their fate once they are defeated. That said, this situation shouldn't be too much of an issue. To gain ticks in a drive clock, a pilot must do things that further their drive. So there's a good chance they all have already laid out the fictional groundwork. In short, when spending drive clocks, consider the pilot's past acts in relation to their goals, how those acts shape the outcome. So yeah, the more realistic, not necessarily realistic, but to some extent the more grounded the drive are, the more obvious it is what are going to be steps and actions that could add to its progression, and something for the players to then take along and have as a tool for future methods of storytelling. Then you have connections. Ties between pilots in a squad are as diverse as those between family. Sometimes they are intense, heated, and asymmetrical, while other times are cool, cordial, and mutual. These connections determine how stressful you find the relationship and how competent you are when you need to assist your fellows. Your pilot's character sheet contains separate 4-tick connection clocks for each other pilot in your squad, representing your relationship with that pilot. Make a belief about that pilot for each tick on that clock. Check in with that player when you do. When the connection clock fails, ask the target pilot for a truth about one of the beliefs tied to them. Then reset the clock to 1 tick as you see them in light. When a connection clock resets, erase all previous beliefs you had about that pilot and write one related to the truth you just learned. It'll take time and effort to understand them again, and after they reveal a truth about themselves, you both take 1 XP, and you may put this XP into any XP track on the pilot playbook. So again, reasons to engage with each other and engage with the story and engage with the narratives that each of you create. Now, how do you add ticks to connection clocks? Ticks are added each time a pilot cuts loose, which is mentioned in the downtime section. Spending drive clocks on another pilot's plans or receiving them from your own plans also adds 1 tick. Lastly, some special abilities such as empath's carouse and add ticks under certain circumstances. And here's an example how these look. The beliefs, the section with the beliefs, the ticks. I'm guessing you're probably marking them somewhere nearby, or you're making a mark of your own. Ask a truth, then mark the XP and reset to 1, writing a new belief. Yeah. Always interesting to have. Now, what exactly are beliefs? Pilots in Beamsaber are survivors, and part of their abilities to survive is based on correctly judging the people around them. They quickly form opinions about who they can trust, who they should fear, and who they can use. This makes them rather opinionated about their fellow pilots, but these judgments aren't always correct. These opinions are a pilot's beliefs. A belief is a brief statement about how a pilot feels about another pilot in their squad. Beliefs are simple, quick, and influential in the rapport between the two pilots. However, the players need to remember that their beliefs are not necessarily true, as they are based on incomplete information and gut instinct. For example, Pitchfork has the belief that we fought side by side in the past and I can't trust him at my back in regards to Demon. While she believes this to be true, but its validity is brought into question when Demon abandons the cenotaph by quietly slipping away during a confrontation with a breath of faith. So, you know, just because you form the belief doesn't mean that that belief is going to remain a constant. The amount of beliefs a pilot has about another pilot is equal to the number of ticks they have in their connection clock with that pilot. Each playbook has some example beliefs, but feel free to write your own. A good belief is something a pilot might say about a squad mate to a confidant. Easily summarized so that it can be quickly remembered when relevant. It can be potentially true, suitable for the game setting and tone, and something that the player is interested in exploring. Maybe there is an aspect of a character that they might relate to and are interested in understanding more of. If a pilot struggles because of the beliefs they have about their fellow pilots, they can mark 1 XP at the end of the session, or 2 XP if it came up more than once. So there's benefits of causing storytelling conflict. So it's always important, but yeah, nice way to kind of add a bit of additional characterization and keep players engaged and keep players kind of pay attention to everyone around them and pay attention to the table, as these are important elements that might come into play later down the line. So it's cool to kind of keep track of. Then we have stress. Through luck and force of will, these pilots overcome many obstacles that would cause others to fall. This ability to survive is represented with stress. Pilots can spend stress to give themselves or their fellow pilots an edge over whatever is in their way. There are 5 main ways that pilot can spend their stress. First one is pushing themselves once per action. Your action roll or fortune roll, a pilot can spend 2 stress to select one of the following actions. They take an additional dice. They add a +1 level of effect to an action. Take an action while incapacitated, but primarily by level 3 harm. Pushing yourself when you have no dice in an action lets you roll 1 die instead of just rolling 2 of them and taking the lowest, so you don't do it. It's advantage roll, which gives you a 50-50 chance of success instead of, you know, the lower rate. You also get the other option is flashback, where a pilot has prepared for a seemingly unexpected circumstance. They can have a flashback to show that they aren't caught off guard. The pilot describes what they did, and the game master will tell them if there is a need for an action roll. If the preparation was 1, simple, and there was ample opportunity to do so, it's 0 stress. Complicated, or there was little chance to make it's 1 stress. Convoluted, involving unlikely occurrences and openings, it costs 2 stress. So you can make it also a bit unbelievable, but it's going to be costly. A flashback cannot undo something that has already happened, such as removing a character currently in the scene, but it can provide means for dealing with the current situation. If a flashback involves a downtime activity, pay one personnel or one material as appropriate instead of stress. So we can do it even outside of the cost of stress, if it seems fit. Another way to use stress is to assist. When a pilot aids another, they spend stress to give their allies benefits. Assists are explained in the teamwork section, I think later in the page, within the same chapter. Resistance is when a pilot negates a consequence, they take stress based on their resistance roll. Again, it has been explained in the first introductory chapter. And special abilities. Some abilities let a pilot spend stress to activate their talents, such as the empath's telepathy or the hacker's Tesla. When spending stress to activate an ability, each ability must be paid for separately. Stress can be removed between missions by spending time with your fellow pilots and taking the cut loose downtime activity, mentioned in downtime activities chapter. But what happens when you stress out? When a pilot reaches their max stress, which is 9 in most cases, they can either leave the situation quietly to lick their wounds or push on recklessly. If they remove themselves quietly, the pilot heals all stress and chooses a scar suitable to the event that filled their last stress box. Cards are going to be mentioned below. They leave the current situation in a terrible state but return later at an appropriate time during the mission. If they push on recklessly, they can take a dire action that lets the pilot ignore existing harm or damage penalties. They cannot spend stress on this action, nor can they make resistance rolls, since stress is maxed out, but quirks can be exhausted as normal. If they get a 6 on a dire action, they can take another one when they next act, potentially allowing them to press onward for the scene. If it's a 5 or lower, or they choose to take no further actions, that is their last action. And on a result of less than 6, they suffer consequences as normal. But after they taking their last action, or at the end of the scene, they receive an appropriate level 3 harm and are removed from the scene in a bad shape. With their stress maxed out, several things happen when they return. Their stress heals completely. They gain a scar that reflects what filled their last stress box. But additionally, if a player rolls a critical success, 2 6s on a dire action, they heal 1 stress instead of having an improve effect, are no longer taking dire actions, and they return to acting normally, and avoid taking a scar and the level 3 harm by the dire action. So stress kind of functions like a death saving throw, kind of downed sort of scenario where you are at your last line, and it's up to you to decide if you just keel over and recuperate for the next encounter, next mission, or you decide to push forward, possibly getting yourself back in shape, or still risking yourself of getting bad outcomes and something related to the dire actions that you're getting. Yeah, so because we mentioned scars, what are they and what exactly do they mean? When a pilot takes a scar, they are forever changed by the war. During every downtime phase going forward, they will need to cut loose at least once or take 1 stress per scar. They have the scar they have at the end of the downtime. However, if a pilot gains a scar during the previous mission, they do not suffer distress from any other of their scars. Scar conditions are not easily removed, though they can be with a suitable series of long-term projects, and they can affect a pilot's personality. If a pilot suffers the repercussions of their scars during a session, they get an XP at the end of it, or 2 if they struggled multiple times. Struggling with a scar can occur through a narrative play, such as missing opportunities or needlessly creating trouble, and through consequences on action rolls. When you see an opportunity for your scar to cause trouble, tell the game master and they'll add an appropriate consequence to your roll, regardless of the result if you wish. Again, player's consent first and foremost. And each pilot can sustain up to 4 scars. If a pilot takes a 4th scar, I think they were meant to say a 5th scar, because they say up to 4, so that means that you can take a 5th scar. That's my understanding. But anyways, at this point, they must either retire to a life elsewhere, or they can be handed over to a faction that has a negative relationship with the squad. Ooh. If they retire, they settle down away from the war with a quality of life indicated by the changes they made through spending drives, as described in the drive section. If the pilot is given to another faction, the squad's relationship with that faction goes up by 1 level. What happens to the pilot after that is up to the game master, but it probably isn't pleasant. And remember your lines and veils. So, giving up to a low ranking squad usually is not necessarily a death sentence, but it's definitely the bad ending, let's call it, or the unfortunate end, or tragic end. While, you know, retirement, depending on how many things have been achieved, could be something good or something bad. We have some examples of scars: paranoid and obsessed, reckless, cold, soft, vicious, paranoid, fractious, obsessed, haunted. Oh, these are same here. Examples of scars. I see. Good enough. At what page we are? 76. I think we're far from ending, but yeah. I like this, that, you know, scars and stress is kind of like a system of hit points. Let's call it a narrative hit points. I think maybe it's better to say it this way. I'm not sure if there might be some actual term out there, but I'm currently deeply forgetting. I'm pretty sure there was like some sort of actual term to this, but I just don't remember it. But yeah, let's call them narrative hit points, where the more negative things happen, or the more you choose to take risk or choose to take you know, stressful actions, the more likely you are you're getting yourself into this scenario. So this, I like that, you know, there is a level of control where the players can balance out how much they decide to push themselves on, and how exactly that's gonna affect the character. So, you know, at the same time, you have a few moments here and there where the player, where the outcomes or the encounters can put the players in such a scenario. But in a good chunk of them, outside of the resistance and like pushing, outside of the resistance, which is more of a choice made based on outcomes outside of their control in some scenarios. The rest are up to them if they decide to have a flashback, to push themselves, to assist, use an ability. But yeah, I do like it. I do like the narrative aspects of kind of how you determine if a character still is around or not. And this is also a way to kind of, you know, sunset a character without actually putting elements of tragedy or like death, in case you have a party that does not necessarily enjoy group TPKs, or not necessarily group TPKs, but even just general player deaths. Retirement is an option, and depending on how the circumstances of the retirement, that character at the least could still be a reoccurring NPC to some extent, if, you know, it's not any sort of tragic end or tragic conclusion, as was mentioned before. So that's good overall. Yeah, there was also mention of teamworks, where there will be times where you need a little help from your friends, and that's when you need teamwork, and there are 4 methods to aid your fellow pilots. You have assist, which was mentioned before, where you describe how your pilot helps another with their action roll. Take a stress equal to the number of ticks in your connection clock with them, and select that many unique benefits from the following. So the deeper connection, the more benefits you get, but also the more stress you apply to yourself. So you have choices there as well. If you want to help a player out, help a pilot out, but you don't want to take too much stress, you can choose to help out the one with the least connections. Or if you realize that you need to help, you want to have the highest impact in that moment, you choose someone with the highest connection, but take the risk of taking more stress upon you. And the benefits can be they take an additional dice, they have an improved effect, an improved position, they ignore level 3 harm or level 3 damage if they're in a vehicle. So the stronger the connection with the pilot, the more stress you take when assisting them, and the harder you will work to aid them. So that's kind of like the narrative aspect. The more connected you are with someone, the more likely you're going to put more into it to help them out. If more than one pilot wants to assist, you may want to perform a group action instead. You also have Protect, which describes how you maneuver yourself to take a consequence that would otherwise affect the squad mate. You suffer that consequence in their place, and you can resist as normal. So if you feel like you have a way to avoid it, or higher chance of avoiding that consequence than your party member, you can just be like, get down, Mr. President sort of style. You also have Setup. You can weaken an obstacle or empower an ally to set a squad mate up for their action. A setup action functions like an action roll. You describe how you want to set up another pilot and go through your action roll procedure. On a result of 4 or higher, any squad mate that follows through on your setup can choose their improved position or increased effect on their, or can choose either improved position or increased effect on their action roll. So they get a benefit on depending on what they want. And finally, you can lead a group action. Sometimes you'll want to overcome obstacles together on a mission, such as everyone sneaking past the security system, or coordinating an attack on a target. If multiple pilots want to work together on one action, they designate a pilot as the group leader and choose an action. The leader describes how they lead the group, and the game master sets up the position and effect. Everyone decides on their bonus die and the rolls for the same action. If a cohort participates in the group action, it adds no dice, but modifies the position and effect as appropriate to its scale and expertise. The group uses the single best result for everyone. If the action rolled is a pilot action, the leader takes 1 stress for each participant that roll 1 or 3 as their best result, between 1 to 3. If the action rolled is a vehicle action, the leader exhausts 1 quirk or adds 1 tick to their temporary vehicle clock, mentioned in the vehicle chapter, if they rolled between a 1 or 3 as their best result, and exhausts another quirk if at least one other participant rolled a 1 or 3. So in here, the quirks, they only use at most 2 quirks. If a pilot didn't roll as part of the group, they cannot use the group's result. If the roll has a desperate position, the leader adds 1 XP to the attribute rolled as at the end of the session. You cannot receive an assist on a group action. So you have elements of team working and elements of working together and creating this kind of bigger moment. And depending on how risky it is, you also get some benefits and, some little downsides here and there if, the dice are not in your favor, but still with the reason of pushing the story forward. So again, really cool that assisting is also a form of teamwork and cooperative storytelling, and not just here have some extra dice or here have a better effect. Let's cooperate and create this big action and big thing together. It's really cool. I really like it. Again, a lot of these elements, a lot of these sections within the pilots, and I'm expecting that's going to be a common thing across the board with all the other sections, the squad book, the squad creation, and the vehicle creation, where it's more about telling something about your character, your group, and the world itself, or how exactly the world affected you, or you are affected within, or you affect the world. Really interesting. Anyways, I'm gonna take a quick break as an ad has just come up, and I'll return after the ad break is done. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, there we go. There we are. Let's get back to it, because I don't think we have too much left. I think somewhere around 8 pages, if I remember correctly. Because I know we don't have to go, the plan is not to go up until the very end of the chapter. Because there's going to be some parts where I'm just gonna leave it for you all to check out. Maybe we're gonna have like a quick look at one of the pilot playbooks, just to get an idea on how exactly they are structured, but not look too in-depth within him either. Yeah, before the break, we talked about teamwork and what kind of actions either as you as an individual pilot can do, or as an entire squad group that you can achieve to help each other out and push yourself towards a goal. And here we get a example of this getting into play. So, Tower, Scarecrow, and Demon and the fire team of Toughs. I thought it was Thoughts for a second. Move through an active conflict zone in their vehicles. They need to get through quickly without catching the eye of any combatants. They perform a group action using maneuver to get everyone out of the battlefield. They're using their vehicles, so the leader will have to spend quirks. Tower takes the lead, since their Mantis has the most unspent quirks. The Game Master sets the position and effect as a controlled standard, but the Toughs worsen the position to risky standard because their numbers draw attention. All the pilots roll to their maneuvers, but it doesn't go well. Tower and Demon get less than a 4, while Scarecrow gets a 5. As Scarecrow's roll was the highest, the group's result is a 5. The leader, Tower, and the one other participant, Demon, rolled between 1 and 3. So Tower must spend 2 quirks. A 5 gets the group partial success with a consequence. They reach the office building they need to enter, but enemy infantry have occupied the building as a consequence. The pilots will have to go in on foot to remove them. Demon suggests that he opens fire on the infantry alongside the Toughs by rolling struggle. Tower wants to assist by being a distraction. And Scarecrow wants to help by sniping the enemy NCOs. Since two pilots want to assist Demon suggests leading a struggle group action. This time, the Toughs improve the position and effect to risky standard as their numbers even the odds in the struggle. As this is a pilot action, any 1 to 3 result will cost stress. Demon, Tower, and Scarecrow all roll struggle, and things go slightly better this time. Demon and Scarecrow both get a 3, costing Demon 2 stress. But Tower gets a 6. The group land a success with no consequence, and the enemy infantry are routed. So here is a quick example on how group actions can work and how exactly they can build interesting group moments. And now we have a big part of this game that has been mentioned quite a few times already, that being the rivals. Pilots have very intense lives, which sometimes leads to fervent encounters with other people, and an antagonistic connection as a result. There is a person out there they just can't stand, and the feeling is mutual. This is a pilot's rival, who exists to present a challenge whenever they are on screen. A pilot can acquire a rival by naming an NPC they want to clash with during the game. The NPC can be present in the current scene, declared during pilot creation, or be named at any other time. A rival immediately gains increased narrative significance, as well as the rival moves, and a tick challenge clock that comes with their new position. Add the rival to the pilot's connections, mark 1 tick in their connection clock, and write down 1 belief about them. A pilot can only have 1 rival at a time, but more than 1 pilot can share the same rival. The rival's connection clock can increase via 2 ways. The rival inflicts a consequence on the pilot, or the pilot adds 1 tick to the rival's challenge clock. Both of these add a tick once per mission and downtime cycle. When the connection clock fills, the pilot takes 1 XP and asks the Game Master a question about a belief they have with their rival, which the Game Master must answer truthfully, so it's not like hidden layered secrets. No, you tell them something truthful about the rival. The player then resets the connection clock and writes a new belief about their rival. If the pilot struggles because of their belief with their rival, they can mark an XP at the end of the session. However, picking fights can ruin associations. Declaring a rival lowers the squad status with the rival's squad by 1. Killing that rival also lowers that status by 1, as they were an important pillar of morale, now that they have elevated status within the story. When rivals appear in missions, they always cause trouble for the pilots. The Game Master creates at least a 1/8 tick clock called the challenge clock to represent the obstacles, which the rival represents. Or presents. Sorry. But rivals, no matter how friendly, are never to be taken lightly. Pilots may need to overcome several challenge clocks, represented by multiple obstacles, before tackling the rival directly. If several pilots share the same rival, they must overcome an additional 4-tick challenge clock for every pilot with that rival. So the more people are involved, the harder it is, because you have to make an balanced out challenge, basically an escalating or any equivalent kind of, effort challenge to the amount of people involved. For example, Hana Copeland is both Pitchfork and Tower's rival. When Hana appears in a mission, the players must fill her 8-tick challenge clock plus an additional 4-tick challenge clock to defeat her, as she's the rival of 2 pilots. So there's a lot to deal with when it comes to rivals. So they can really shift the encounter or scenario if they become present, and all of a sudden there is a new goal, especially for the rivals. And if you made their rivalry compelling, or they decide that the rivalry is extremely personal for one reason or another. In general, it has to be personal, but if you prefer to have that kind of character who decides to be more hyper focused on that rivalry and over everything else. Once the last challenge is completed, the rival is defeated. Keep in mind that defeating a rival is not the same as removing them from the war. If you want to completely remove them, you must spend 2 drive clocks to permanently change the course of life. Rivals are very dangerous, both during mission and between them. Rivals can inflict a number of consequences called a rival move, at any time equal to the number of pilots on a mission. However, if more than 1 pilot share the same rival, the rival may inflict an extra consequence per additional rivalry with the pilot. Rivals may inflict a consequence before the pilot acts, on a result of 6, after a fortune roll, and literally at any time. Players can suggest dramatic moments where a rival move may trigger, or the rival move can simply trigger as an additional consequence for an action roll. The consequence's severity is the same as the affected pilot's current position, and must be appropriate to the fiction. For example, Hana Copeland gets 4 rival moves because she is Pitchfork's rival, and there are 4 pilots on the mission. If Tower and Scarecrow also had her as a rival, she would get a total of 6 rival moves, or for the number of pilots, plus 2 more for Tower and Scarecrow as rivalries. So it gets even higher in number. If a pilot who is rivals with this person adds at least 1 tick to the rival's challenge clock, that pilot can mark 1 XP on their pilot playbook at the end of the session. This is a separate XP gained due to struggling with a belief about a rival. If a pilot who is rivals with this person, okay, does it mention? Oh no, it says at least 1 tick. So it doesn't matter if you have 2 ticks, 5 ticks, or 3 ticks, or a full tick, or multiple ones. You need to have at least 1, and you get XP for doing this, not getting XP for each of the ticks you do. But when the rival's challenge clock is filled, the player who has that character as their rival, or other players with permissions from them, may spend 2 drive clocks to permanently remove the rival as a threat. The pilot can then mark 2 XP in addition to the 1 XP gained from participating in completing the rival's challenge. Permanently removed as a threat is brought. So, as they might be persuaded to leave the war, be put in a coma, or join the squad. If the rival is removed as a threat, pilots can no longer gain XP from them. If the rival challenge clock is partially completed or completely filled, but they are not permanently removed, any ticks on the clock are removed as they recuperate. So you have to basically redo it if they are not permanently removed each time the challenge reappears, basically. Rivals should have agency, the power and the ability to mess with the pilot's plans. They should use abhorrent means to reach admirable goals or gain admirable effects for horrible goals. Put them at odds with the pilot's goals and or effects and then lose. So yeah, interesting that, you know, the rival, in a way, it's an ever-present kind of like shifting of balance where you kind of have to set up yourself, like a lot of the other actions that we've seen here. You kind of have to once again set up yourself to the point of being able to remove them as a threat, and set up yourself by, you know, achieving your own goals, achieving your own drives, and after that also successfully dealing with the challenge that the rival offers, and then spending those drives defeat the rival to, you know, permanently remove them however you want to call them, basically no longer be in play. So at the very least, definitely in early game, rivals are going to be an ever-present aspect of the game where it's going to be a while until you're going to be able to remove them. So it's a nice way of interweaving this aspect within the story and not making rivals not necessarily seem one note, but more the possibility that some games that are more heavily numerical and mechanical, where you create a rival but then you realize that, I don't know, the player might be some tricked out, I don't know, master of the action economy, min-maxer, whatever, and in some challenge encounter they just dominate you because, you know, the player just had a better grasp of the rules, or just put something together, or just a dice roll somehow in their favor and made that a possibility. Now all of a sudden you're in a weird corner where this character that should have been a big part of the story all of a sudden has been just wiped out in mere moments. So here, having these requirements and these kind of foundations that need to be built in it beforehand, always keep you on your toes, and always keep this as an ever-present aspect, an ever-present conflict. But we've talked a lot about rivals. Let's talk about allies. As friends also come in all different forms. Could be childhood friends, current or former lovers, tied together by blood, and many other reasons. However, a pilot's ally is not defined by the nature of the connection, but by the fact that the pilot can rely on them. A pilot can have any number of allies, but it takes a lot more to make friends than it does to make enemies. If a pilot wants to add an established NPC as an ally, it should fit the fiction, first and foremost. A brand new acquaintance won't be an ally, but if the pilot works to build up the bond, possibly through a long-term project, then they will probably become one. Once per session, a pilot can declare that they have an old friend who can help. Yes, the old "I know a guy" trick. It's kind of it's a good storytelling tool that you can give the players of letting them have a calling card at any point in the campaign sessions, anything of that sort. They can go, "I know a guy," and can assist with whatever that situation can be. This can be someone from the pilot's past, an NPC that has not yet interacted with them, or a previously declared ally. You can describe the scenario of when you last saw them, and make an action roll appropriate for those circumstances. On a 4 to 6, you are on good terms with the ally, and they're likely to help you. On a 1 to 3, they don't want to see you, but could be convinced to help. Any roll less than 6 will always incur consequences as appropriate to the position, which could relate to your past with the ally, the ally's current situation, or something unrelated to the ally. Add the ally to your connections with a shorter description. For example, Demon contacts Julia Faraday, the Ripper, of the Hyenas for some help. Last time he saw her, they were on opposite sides of the battlefield, in their AWVs. He rolls a risky standard battle to see how she's feeling about their relationship. Gets a 4. So she's happy to hear from him, but there will be a risky consequence. Julia is facing disciplinary action for punching a superior officer, and Demon will need to help her get her AWV out of the impound if she's going to use it. The challenges could also be just an additional aspect of the storytelling, not necessarily a challenge of their relationship between the two. Then, if a pilot wants to accomplish something that they don't know how, they should consider whether or not an ally can help them. Allies are emotionally invested in aiding the pilot, but can't always be present or do things for them. Sometimes, taking advantage of what your ally provides requires an action roll or fortune roll. Allies exist to provide an avenue for the pilots to accomplish their goals, not to do it for them. So they are a tool to kind of push you forward, not to kind of bring you back. But again, very akin to the rivals, but in the other side of the coin kind of way. They're going to be an ever-present thing that you'll have to manage to some extent, but they will never be out there to just be your get out of jail card. In most scenarios, yes, they can help you achieve the goal, but you still have to work for it. It's not like they're going to do the goal in your stead. And depending on the outcomes, rolls, and results, you might have to do a bit of extra work yourself. And now we are looking at all the connection and all the aspects of that are tied to the pilot. Let's talk about advancements, because all the things that we talked, rivals, allies, teamworks, drives, scars, stresses, all of those elements of characterization, storytelling, and narrative give you XP, because all of this is story forward, and roleplay focus. So through roleplay, you gain experience, and how exactly do you use that experience? As pilots make their way through the war, they'll build up experience as XP. There are 3 types of XP: Playbook XP, Attribute XP, and General XP. Each type determines how it is gained, and which XP tracks can go into. Pilots can gain Playbook XP by training the playbook during downtime and marking 1 XP box next to the abilities on the character sheet. When a pilot's playbook has 8 XP, they reset the playbook XP to 0 and take a new playbook special ability. So you first advance the existing ability and then jump to the next. Oh no. You have an ability, then you need to obtain 8 XP and then you gain a new ability. It's not like the ability itself upgrades. My bad. You have Attribute XP, which rolling for a desperate action regardless of the result, or when training during downtime. Going to be also mentioned in downtime actions. For example, a desperate move roll earns the pilot 1 XP in expertise. When an attribute gathers 6 XP, you reset the XP track to 0 and add an action point to one of the actions under that attribute. Then an actions may have a max rating of 3 unless the squad has the Mastery Squad upgrade. So you can't get to rating 4 unless the squad as a whole is able to achieve a specific stage of progression, I'm suspecting. And then you have General XP. That is earned through several methods. The player chooses when they put the General XP, where they put it, be it playbook or attribute, at the end of the session, and the pilots determine if they express their tragedy, history, or opening, if they struggle with their beliefs, scars, or the vehicle quirks, or address a challenge with methods determined by the playbook. The pilot takes 1 XP for each of the item that occurred, and an additional XP for each item that occurred more than once. And if a pilot contributes at least 1 tick, the rival's clock during a session, or if they fill the entire clock, or if it fills their connection clock with another pilot or with their rivals, they gain 1 General XP. If they permanently remove their rival as a threat, they gain 2 General XP. So all the XPs that were gains that we've looked at up until now, all of them are within the General XP section. Attribute XP, we've seen that with the Desperate Maneuver mentioned beforehand. as being a way to gain XP. And the playbook, we have not yet looked at it. But quite obvious, and a lot of it you can then also justify yourself in which ones fit the theme and story and narrative of that moment. Like if you decide with your general XP to add, you know, points in what you saw fit as part of the narrative that has evolved in the moment, or if you want, you can also just, you know, maximize or just put it into something that you believe that you, as a character, you would want to, as a player, you would want to advance with your character, because you can also do that. But, you know, it's nicer to figure out, like, hey, these events were tied to X thing or X attribute or aspect of the playbook, so it made sense that I would advance here. But again, the game does not force you to do that. It's up to you if you want to choose a more narrative reason of where you advance, or just a personal one, because the general XP at the very least allows you that flexibility of advancing in a direction that you want more. Then, when it comes to adding new pilots, as was mentioned before, there can be 5 reasons for a new pilot to join the squad. A pilot takes a level 4 harm and dies, so the player needs to create a new one. They get 4 scars and retire, so the player creates a new character. The pilot goes AWOL after overindulging, which is mentioned in I think in the downtime activities as well. So their player creates a new character to play until the old one returns. The player may choose which pilots they send out on future missions, but cannot switch pilots mid-missions unless the pilot they initially choose is removed from the mission by gaining a scar or taking level 4 harm. So that makes sense. A new player joins the game, obviously, or a pilot completes a drive that removes them from the game. So there can be many reasons, a good selection of them being mechanical. And wherever possible, introduce a new pilot at the start of the downtime phase, so they give the pilots a chance to interact with them before throwing everyone into a mission. Make sure that every other pilot has 1 tick in their connection clock with the new pilot when they are introduced. The new pilot participates in the downtime phase as... Yeah, this one, quite obvious reasons. I don't think there's much to add here outside of just do the previous steps alongside for the new character as well. That's basically the rundown. And the final part, which is something interesting, because I think a lot of other roleplay books or ttrpgs might struggle with this element, especially some that are more action or mechanical or systemic oriented, like D&D, Pathfinder, that sort of thing, where the sides may not be balanced, which is pilot versus pilot and player versus player. Now, there are 2 ways to handle conflicts between pilots. Players can play it out in character without rolling dice, or they can let the dice determine the outcome. If a pilot acts against their player's pilot, they may roll an appropriate action, and those involved can make a resistance roll to deal with the consequences. If you turn to the dice, here are some suggested steps for managing the conflict fairly. First, you examine the source of the conflict. If the conflict arises from differences between the pilots, that's usually nothing to worry about. However, never use dice to resolve conflicts between players. If the players are at odds, everyone needs to talk the conflict out until you reach a resolution. So, you know, don't jump to dice use for things that could be probably conversations or moments of roleplay. Second, you take a breather. Stop everything and take stock of the situation when pilots act against each other. Nothing moves forward until everyone agrees how to handle the conflict, whether that's with dice or taking it out in character. If you need to know who acts first, it should be clear from the fiction. If it isn't, have each player make a fortune roll using the actions they're taking, and have the pilot with the higher roll act first. Reroll for ties. And thirdly, accept the method for resolution. Don't roll any dice or move the story forward until everyone understands what's at stake. Discuss everyone's goal in the moment, what they plan on doing, and what they are willing to give, and how their differences might be resolved. Everyone at the table can make suggestions and objections when negotiating the situation. If your group can't reach a unanimous decision on how to resolve the situation, the conflict doesn't come to a head. It's not unusual for two people to be a hair away from coming to blows, only for them to walk away. And finally, acknowledge the outcome. If everyone agrees on the method of resolution, then everyone must accept the outcome. Consequences can always be resisted, but trying to escape the conflict's terms is acting in bad faith. So yeah, if you want to have conflicts as being something where dice come into play, or it has a bigger impact within the wider narrative and wider story, you know, play fairly and be fine and accept, you know, the fact that sometimes you might have to roll with the punches. You might get an outcome that you did not expect, or it's not necessarily the one that is ideal for you, but that's the outcome of the story, and that's what you all agreed with. You know, fair play. Don't you know, don't backpedal your decisions. Now we get a section for the pilot actions in depth, which I'm not gonna look into. That's something for you to check out in the future. But before we mention anything else or just have a general discussion, I would like we have the pilot gear, which nothing to look at. That's just general gear for you to get an idea. Okay, pilot playbook. Let's have a quick look at one of them. We have the Ace, a graceful and daring pilot. We have here a assuming cat boy. Battlefields of the war stretch across cities, continents, and star systems. Such distances are not easily traversed on foot, but we make incredible machines that stride, soar, and roam. Most see a vehicle just as a tool, but for aces, they're the better half. Created with purity of purpose and desire to be filled up. The vehicles in the war are a light for people looking to join that purity desire. How to gain your skills? What made you realize you belonged behind the wheel? So some questions to ask yourself for the character. Yeah, now, you want to choose the Ace because you want to be the hotshot pilot, known for being the best in a vehicle, have an incredible flexible vehicle with experimental equipment, or be more reliant on your vehicle than other pilots. What are the triggers for XP? Earn end of the session XP when you address a challenge with piloting or violence. And for Ace actions, you get a +2 to maneuver and +1 to engineering, so you have some benefits. You have some attribute benefits for depending on what type of pilot you are. You have a set of abilities. Let's look at one of them. I have to read this one. I have to read Red Comet. No, fine. More than meets the eyes. Fuck it. Your custom vehicle can transform into a secondary form. Oh my fucking god, it is actually. Detail that second form. Select 2 load worth of vehicle gear and 3 action points that your vehicle has. It lacks this gear and these action points when its secondary form. Select 2 load worth of vehicle gear and 3 action points that your vehicle lacks. It has this gear and these action points when in its secondary form. So basically you have 2 loads worth of, so you have 2 separate loads of gears and action points for each form. That's my understanding. Damn. And read comment because I'm pretty sure I know you have a reputation as a pilot of great skill, whether earned fairly or not. When you try to impress or dismay someone, you may use your reputation to take a dice. When you reveal yourself with a dramatic action, those around you are briefly stunned. God damn it, of course. Okay, I already like this. I already like this. Fair enough. And you have a specialist pilot gear that you can grab yourself. That's cool. You have some mention of beliefs. They handle their vehicle very poorly. They don't understand my value as a pilot. What Ace gather information. What is their vehicle capable of? When are their vehicles unattended? So aspects Ace allies and rivals. Denari, a gruff mechanic. Cautious, a journalist, sly smuggler, pilot. And the starting builds. You're at Comet, Command 2 plus Consort 2, Berserker, Tester, Tanker. And we even have a mention here. I trust Bird of my life, but he's nothing special. I'm a little jealous of pilots with fancier AWVs. But at the end of the day, Bird does fine against them. Most of the time, I've seen some pilots pull off stuff I didn't think was possible. It's hard to describe the way they fight. That's different. Like, you know, the way really expensive clothes just fit the right people? Not like the hand-me-downs I've got. Clothes or the AWVs. Pilot and the AWV moving together like one. Like they're made for each other. Note to self, see one of these. See one of these, run the other way. Maybe smart man, Pitchfork. Smart man. Also, one mention about the pilot gear though, aside of just having, when declaring items that your pilot is carrying, which you can select items from the playbook and from the following. Okay, so yeah, because the gear you can choose. I think missions tell you how much gear you can have and what level of load, and basically the playbook offers you some additional exclusive to your specific type of pilot gear. These are like general ones that everyone can have, and then you have the ones exclusive to you as a specific type of pilot. But I already like it. I'm kind of annoyed that Mortem is, yeah, it's an Ace. I'll have to look on some of the other ones to see like what kind of other references are out there. But yeah, that overall covers the pilot chapter. I don't think but you know, looking at the time, it's within this amount. Yeah, I don't want to push within the pilot actions in depth, as I mentioned before. It's something for you to look at and get more in depth. I just wanted to look at the broader strokes of all of this. But I do like it. I like how in depth it is. I do appreciate, and honestly, I find it very interesting how every aspect is built into the storytelling, and quite akin to maybe some other like more roleplay driven systems. A lot of forms of advancements and forms of progressing forward to the story are more akin to those games where doing things that are more in character, more in roleplay, more in the actual of interacting with the narrative, the story, these encounters or scenarios is what is driving your character to advance, and how exactly you develop the relationships between your other players and NPCs around you. I like the aspect which is I like the aspect of rivals, because it's extremely in theme for the mecha genre. This concept of having someone of that is always having a foil is very akin within the mecha genre, of having this rival pilot of different beliefs, of different standing, or who knows what other reasons that you could find involved. It could also be to some degree a friendlier rivalry. I'm kind of thinking in a way how the Char and Amuro's kind of relationship in Gundam worked. Like, it became like, initially it became kind of a bit of just two legendary pilots at opposing sides of the fight, who clash together just because, you know, that's they are in those moments they are in the position of just being soldiers of higher standing, order to be on different sides, to then two individuals that to some extent work towards different goals, but to some extent they are of different beliefs and have they're of different ideologies, but and have different beliefs of each other. Like even the concept of beliefs is very heavily kind of stood in here. Like this idea of, because you know, in Gundam Zeta, or I think it was in Gundam Zeta where Amura for the longest of time, if not for the entirety of that show, if I remember correctly, is very distant from Char just because of his previous standing and previous beliefs and previous experience that he's had with Char, and he's not very trusting, and he's constantly at odds just because they've been in opposing sides of the fight. So he's still viewing their relationship with that kind of lens, even though both of them have been more cooperative towards the general protagonist of Gundam Zeta. I forgot the name. Who goes all kind of comatose, which again very akin to the mecha genre and the sci-fi genre especially within anime, where by the end of the fight, by the end of whatever conflict whatever specific conflict the pilot has been thrown in many scenarios, they don't come out of it intact. They are scarred, as mentioned here, and be it in a very debilitating way. I think they were like comatose to some extent, or like fully bedridden and taken care by the love interest from that point onwards. Or just have a full-on tragic end if we're talking about like Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, where even there the idea of which I wonder if again, it's not necessarily just to Iron-Blooded Orphan, but I know that Iron-Blooded Orphans had a more focus on the concept of stress and stressing out and pushing forward, because there was that whole concept of that entire neuro system that was connected with the machine. There was like this deeper synergy between pilot and vehicle that allowed the protagonist there to also control the Barbatos Gundam to a higher level of performance, to the point that it killed him, being able to just push beyond even the human limits of his bodies to of operating the machine. So again, even that, I like how a lot of the tropes, a lot of the elements of storytelling, a lot of the themes and concepts are heavily ingrained into the mechanical storytelling, into the mechanical and tools of pushing the narrative within this system. And again, the more I read it, the more I like where this system is going and where the system is kind of like developing, and I'm excited to read more of it. But yeah, that overall concludes the pilot section and what we are going to cover for today. I don't want to extend it by any other reasons. As I said, the playbook is something for you to look at. The pilot action in depth, similar thing. Gear and all, again, anything that is about player choices and list of customizations, that's up for you to look more in depth. Next time, I'll have to see if I'm gonna look at the player principles in fiction first gaming section, or if I'm gonna leave it after the fact, and maybe we're gonna check the vehicles and squad faction sections in the following chapters. I feel like I would like to check the vehicles next, because to me it feels like it is the next in line. I'll probably have a quick look at the first few pages of the vehicle chapters to see if that fits in line as the next thing to cover, or if we're gonna continue within the order that the book offers us the content, which is gonna be the player principles and fiction first gaming. Even though it's a really short set of chapters, it's only like 10 pages worth of it, but that would still cut us from covering anything else for like the coming, because I would put these two alongside the downtime activities personally. So because of that, I would kind of like to go with the vehicles and then squad and factions as the next one and go from there. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that is it for today and for our coverage of Beat Saber. I like it. I'm excited to read more of it, and knowing my group and knowing that how we've handled other games in the past, I think like Beamsaber might be a system that might push a bit more forward to. It's one of the game system that we might run for the one shot that I would like to run and plan out. We'll have to think about it. I'll have to look into it once we have a full coverage of it and we got maybe closer to a point where we can do some sessions once again. We'll see. But until then, that's gonna be it, and that's also gonna be it for today. But before I go, as per usual, let me see who we can say hi to. Must be some people out there are having some fun times. Let's see. Is something RPG adjacent to some degree or another. Let's see. Only see anything of the birds. Am I really ending this at like a weird time? Because I barely... Is there like a special day today? I don't think so. 20th of February? I don't think. I'm saying 20th because I'm pretty sure I'm seeing mostly US people streaming around here. I think I have an idea who we can go and say hi to. Being hit by an ad immediately. It's fine. Oh, actually no. This first. So we first start here. I don't know why I got all of a sudden kind of sniffly today. Like right now to the final hours. I don't know. Really nasally. It's fine. So let me create a channel. At raid. There we go. So we are raiding Cinder Vox. They are playing some Sonic Heroes, which not too in-depth or have too in-depth knowledge about the Sonic games. But yeah, fellow VTuber streamer. I think they've been around the stream forecast stuff as well. So definitely a cool individual, did that cool stuff. And it's like a lot of fun. I think I've seen a bit of like Sonic Heroes, but again, I'm not too familiar with the Sonic game genres. I know there's like a big following, big fan base around it. It's just not been in my corner of the woods, sort of thing. But anyways, that's gonna be it for today and for the coverage of Beamsaber for this week. We're gonna come back at it next Friday and probably check in the vehicle section. That's my guess, but again, we'll see. Keep an eye out on the schedule. Once the stream is gonna be scheduled and you're gonna have a thumbnail and title, you might get an idea of what exactly is gonna be the coverage for that. But I'll see you all tomorrow, hopefully without any sort of interruptions as it happened last week, with Void Train, as a DLC has been released with new content that we can check out, and that sounds like a lot of fun. So let's do all of that. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. You've been amazing. Don't forget that. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye.